Good morning. It is 3 minutes after 10 and you are listening to James O'Brien on LBC. I hope this doesn't come as a shock to anybody. I hope you haven't tuned in by accident or anything like that. That would be awkward. I couldn't quite put my finger on what was bothering me yesterday. And I worked it out only about 10 minutes ago. So we're going to dive straight into this topic with little or no preparation. Plus ça change. And I'm going to warn you in advance, I may get a bit emotional, oddly. So I teased, not Barry Bethel. Okay, start off at 10. Who was Barry Bethel? Anybody showing your age? What was it called? The thing that Barry Bethel used to advertise on the telly? Is it Sillet Bang? Was it? What was Barry Scott? Who's Barry Bethel? I hope I haven't sort of just accidentally remembered the name of something. Anyway, Baron Bethel. Baron Bethel, not I wonder if his mates call him Barry. If your mate's with the Baron, can you shorten it to Barry? So I teased him a bit yesterday for doing a Clarkson. And then, of course, later in the day, Clarkson did a Clarkson. Claiming that because you didn't do very well in your A-levels, you don't need to worry because this hereditary peer in the House of Lords, he actually wrote these words. That getting bad A-levels taught him how to hustle. I think that's beautiful. I mean, such a perfect illustration of utterly unconscious privilege. And then Clarkson comes along, whose parents had made millions. Do you know how they made their money? Flogging Paddington Bear dolls. It's actually a really lovely story. He tells it very charmingly. But my first home was on a field bordering, well, I didn't live in a field. I lived in a bungalow. But the bungalow was bordering a field owned by the Clarksons, I think. It's in a little village outside Doncaster called Burg Wallace. Was his dad the local doctor or something like that? But anyway, they just came up with this idea. Jeremy Clarkson's mum started making Paddington Bear dolls from scratch. One year, I think they bought the entire output of small size Dunlop Wellington boot. Have you heard this story? I'm pretty sure he tells it as well. You know, what colour boots does Paddington wear? Red boots. Little red boots. I think that the dolls proved so popular. Yellow boots, maybe. Anyway, whatever. They're not. I don't think they're black. That it proved so popular, the Paddington Bear doll, unexpectedly, that they ended up buying the entire stock of whatever colour boots Paddington wears from Dunlop, I think, with a manufacturer. Slim Fast. It's all gone a bit stream of consciousness. It's all gone a bit stream of consciousness this morning. Barry Bethel was Slim Fast. Barry Scott was Sillet Bang. Barry from EastEnders was in extras. So Clarkson had a good upbringing, and there was a little bit of money there. And I think his first job was for the family business. And then he had a brilliant media career. No one can take that away from him. But if he'd messed up his A-levels and had to go back to Burg Wallace to work in the Wimpy Bar or something like that, or even possibly get a job with some strings pulled by his dad, it would have been a very different story. Even Angela Rayner, who I think also talks of not having done well in her A-levels, partly because I think she was a single mum by then. The stories of exceptional people achieving extraordinary things despite early setbacks, they're not quite as helpful as exceptional people think they are, I don't think. And I couldn't quite believe my ears. I think I first heard it when Nick played it out. With Gillian Keegan, I'm told by younger colleagues who pay attention to such things, she's tipped as a future Prime Minister. And it occurred to me that this intervention on the question of A-levels from a Secretary of State Education was so tin-eared and cack-handed that she's almost guaranteed to be the next one if the current direction of traffic is to continue. And that's her job, isn't it? Imagine you're 17, right? You're just beginning to feel the cold grip of fear about next year's exams. You're putting yourself under pressure. Your parents are probably putting you under pressure, even though they try not to. Your school is putting you under a modicum of pressure. You've started developing dreams of university. There's places you'd love to go. The Secretary of State for Education literally comes out and says, they don't really matter. Well, isn't that actually what she said? Should we check the tape? Should we check the tape before we go in? I think we should check the tape before we go any further.
Somebody asked me, what will people ask you in 10 years' time? They won't ask you anything about your A-level grades in 10 years' time. They'll ask you about other things you've done since then, what you've done in the workplace, what you did at university. And then after a period of time, they don't even ask you what you did at university.
It's really stupid because the A-level grades you got will determine what university you went to. So if they're even asking you about what you did at university, the presumption is if you say certain universities, they're going to know what your A-level grades were. Is she really this stupid? And similarly, the workplace, the A-levels you got are going to influence the workplace that you're in. And they're going to actually, depending on whether you go straight into the workplace or you go via university, the A-levels that you got will influence or determine the university that you went to, and the university that you went to will determine the workplace that you enter. So a question about what you're doing in the workplace is contingent upon an understanding of... And the weirdest thing about this is that all I know about Gillian Keegan, have I got this right? All I know about Gillian Keegan is she's the only person from her school who got 10 O-levels in that year. That's literally her claim to fame, I think. She comes from a very different background, much more modest background than almost all of her Conservative cabinet colleagues. But you can't help thinking that if I know how many O-levels she's got, then she arrived at the conclusion not long ago that it was quite a big bloody deal. How do I know how many O-levels Gillian Keegan has got? She doesn't know how many I've got. I know, I must have read it somewhere. Did you tell me that? Did someone tell me that? How do I know how many O-levels Gillian Keegan has got? Why, when I turn my attention to a Secretary of State for Education telling entire generations of children that A-levels don't matter, the only piece of information I can pluck from the fetid swamp that is my memory is the fact that she has 10 O. She got 10 O-levels. She was the only person in her year to get 10 O-levels. How bizarre. How bizarre. Who was that, Keith? How bizarre? Whose track was it? Come on, mate. How bizarre. No? I told you it's one of those acronyms, isn't it? It's one of those three-letter outfits. One of those three. I told you it was all going a bit stream of consciousness today. We've gone from Barry Bethel to Barry Scott to How Bizarre to Gillian Keegan's O-level results. Play the tape. I'll do the thing. I'll tell you what, I'm postponing the story that I want to share with you. OMC. How bizarre. I am postponing the story that I want to tell you because it might make me cry. That's why I've gone a little bit round the houses this morning. So I better tell you the story now. One of the finest men I have ever known. You know that I lost a very close friend during lockdown, not to COVID, but the funeral was a sadder affair than it would have otherwise been because of the fact that unlike people in Boris Johnson's Downing Street who were just having parties, we and his family, including his very young children, obeyed all of the COVID rules as we bid him farewell. And that he, and he'd appreciate this, he was the reason why I couldn't quite pin down what was... I've been listening to the Jonathan Pye podcasts and he swears so much on the radio. I should never listen to them on the way to work. I don't know if you've listened to them yet. They're absolutely brilliant. He's a bit obsessed with me, but yeah, they all are these days. I can't. I listened to another one on the way into work today for the second time. I never listened to podcasts twice, but he swears, and he swears so much that I've brought a bit of it into the studio, and I think Keith might be having a bit of a palpitation. As I nearly went, you could tell then, couldn't you? I nearly went for one. But anyway, he was a wonderful man, and what was really hacking me off yesterday, there we go, that's a better word, was by memory of him, although I couldn't pin it down. You know, it's like having a mental stone in your shoe or something like that, when there's something and you can't, you know it's discombobulated you. You know it's I kind of disturbed your equilibrium, but you can't quite pinpoint why. So here's what happened to Andy, right? Andy grew up in Rochdale. Beautiful man, lovely family. Went to a comprehensive school, a very ordinary comprehensive school called Alder Hill, which is, a big old secondary, and stayed on for the sixth form, but was certainly not intending to go to university. He had secured a traineeship at the local NatWest Bank, and he just bought his first car, which I think was a cheeky little Ford Fiesta, and he was due to start work in September at the local NatWest. And then he got his A-level results. And to the shock of everybody, most of all him, he got the kind of grades that the parents of kids at my school paid tens of thousands of pounds for. He absolutely aced them. Bright as a button, it just turned out the teachers had never noticed. And as a consequence of this, he began to review his options. And he decided to look into something that nobody else in his family had ever looked into, which was university. And he looked into university and decided that actually he'd always quite fancied the idea of being a lawyer, or he took some advice and law seemed to, so he went and studied law, and then he got a place at law school. We are of an age where you didn't have to sell a kidney or mortgage your soul to go into tertiary education on this sort of level, and he got a place at law school, and then he secured a training contract with a big city firm. So, he's now in the absolute Premier League of young graduates. And then he got a little bit bored of that, went into the media, kind of invented YouTube content. But he was one of the very, very first people to be making the backstage stuff. So the Jonathan Ross show or Jamie Oliver, the stuff that you could only watch on YouTube that wasn't on the TV shows. That was him. He invented that, essentially, or was one of the very early pioneers. And then set up his own production company called Little Dot Studios. And by the time he died, he was an absolute don. He'd walk onto stages in San Francisco with a little microphone taped to the side of his face. I mean, it was beautiful to watch. And that all came from that day in Rochdale when he sat in his Ford Fiesta with his mate, Simi, and he opened his envelope and he couldn't quite believe the grades that he saw in front of him. So when I hear people with backgrounds like mine, where Jeremy Clarkson fits into that category, the third Baron Bethel doesn't. I mean, he's on a slightly different planet, telling you that A-levels don't matter. I understand that some of it can come from a place of love and a place of care, because if someone is in pieces today, then you want to reassure them that it's not the end of the world. But I don't think it's a very good idea for a Secretary of State of Education to promote the idea that A-levels don't matter, because they are. I said yesterday that the less you've got, the more they matter. They are transformative. If I'd fluffed my A-levels, right, I'd have taken a year off and done them again. And Dad would have, I could have stayed at home. I wouldn't have needed to get a job. They wouldn't have been over the moon about it, but the system would have been set up in such a way that I just did it again. I got one mate, he took another year off after that. He got great A-levels, but Oxford University kept turning him down. So he took 3 years off until they let him in. That's 3 years off. It's incredible, right? But that's someone from a background like mine. A bit posher than me, actually. Dad was an MP. But the message, I'm going to play it once more, and then I'm going to ask you how A-levels changed your life, all right? That's the question. So I don't want there's plenty of opportunities every year to ring in and tell people how you didn't get any A-levels and you're now considerably richer than Yao. But this is a conversation about how A-levels did have a transformative effect on your life and how they did provide you with access to places that you never would have got to. So it's not a morning for ringing in and saying, well, I didn't get any A-levels and I'm a very successful financial advisor. It's about people who needed A-levels to get through doors that they would not otherwise have got through. And here is the Secretary of State for Education, apparently unaware, despite her own modest background, apparently unaware that those doors even exist.
Somebody asked me, well, what will people ask you in 10 years' time? They won't ask you anything about your A-level grades in 10 years' time. They'll ask you about other things you've done since then, what you've done in the workplace, what you did at university. And then after a period of time, they don't even ask you what you did at university.
So how did your A-level results change your life? Looking back, you may not even have clocked it at the time. But in the sense that if you hadn't got what you got, you wouldn't be where you are. And I hope that you're all right with this. The opposite as well. So even now, you look back and think if things had gone a little bit better at 18, then things would probably be a little bit better now. So genuinely and truly, the consequences of your A-level results, ideally for the good, 0345 6060973, but also, of course, and inevitably and poignantly, for the bad. Hit the numbers now. You will get through, all right? And this is an important conversation. So, it's a very specific question as well. So if you don't normally ring me or you've never rung a radio station before, I want to get as much on the board as I can today, as many stories, because I think I kind of owe it to Andy. 20 minutes after 10 is the time. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. And the question of why A-levels matter is not one that I would normally bother asking. I was going to yesterday, and then I changed my mind because I didn't think it was that interesting. And then the Secretary of State for Education came out and said that they don't. You've got a 17-year-old struggling to knuckle down at the moment. So, oi, Keith, go and do your homework. I don't need to, Dad. The Secretary of State for Education said that A-levels don't really matter. In 10 years' time, no one's even going to ask me what they are. And why the hell did you call me Keith? I'm 17. All my mates laugh at me all the time. That's an old man's name. Fiona's in Beaconsfield. Fiona, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. Long-time listener, first-time caller, although I have spoken to Sangeeta before on a similar subject.
Sorry, no, that's it. You're off. I can't have it. I don't have any. I only take first-time callers. I don't want Sangeeta's seconds. Sorry, Fiona. Have a lovely weekend. All right, then. Seeing as it's you, what would you want to say?
What I'd like to say is I'm so pleased that you raised this subject, because I spent all day. I can't call it tweeting anymore. I have to call it zeeting, which is ridiculous.
Oh, no. Really?
I spent, posting, whatever it is. I spent all day saying, how can someone who is the Education Secretary be so spectacularly tone deaf about something that is so important to so many people on the day when they actually are opening the envelopes? I couldn't believe it. So,
what's your story?
For me, A-levels is probably my biggest, academic achievement, not counting having kids and all of those good things that came afterwards. But I spent my school years being sorry, I'm a bit out of breath. Spent my
it's the excitement of speaking to me, isn't it?
That's what it is.
Yeah, we get a lot of this. Carry on.
Spent my school years being, I wouldn't say bullied, but teased quite, regularly about being the square, the boffin, all of those other good words. Never very good at sports, but always really academic. And so my A-level results were like a big proverbial two fingers up to all of those, nasty girls who used to say all those things to me. So, and it meant that I got into the career I'm in law now. I want to get into politics, actually. But,
really?
It got me into... I do, yes.
Have you seen who you'd have to hang out with?
I have, but I'd be on the opposite table.
Yes, I know.
So
it's a golden ticket. It's a transformative experience. If they hadn't gone well, you would have gone down different paths, and you may have flourished just as much. But the idea that day was not an absolutely crucial day in your development, one of the most important days of your life, is just silly, isn't it?
It's ridiculous, and even as a parent, so I've been through it myself. But as a parent going through the double whammy of GCSEs and A-levels last year for the first time, that was even more excruciating, much more excruciating than waiting for my own results. And to have someone say, whether they've done well, badly, in the middle, to have someone who's supposed to be the person in charge of the system saying that it's unimportant and that no one will ask you in 10 years, which is actually incorrect anyway. I'm regularly asked about why I didn't go to Oxbridge.
Oh, really?
Even at this stage, yeah. When I was applying for training contracts, with your A-level grades, why didn't you go to Oxbridge? And I said, well, actually, it's because my school had predicted much lower grades when you had the predictions.
Sounds familiar, yes.
There's all those sorts of things. And I know law can be very snobby. I'm not saying that I agree with it. But unless you get a 2-1, it's very difficult to get a legal job. And the times that I've managed to persuade people to take, when I've been recruiting, to take really bright people who got 2-2s at university, is because we've gone back to the A-levels. We've looked at what they did at A-levels.
There you go. I didn't know that. That's very interesting. So people who just got unlucky on the day, the system of examining can be pretty brutal, but the A-levels give an indication of potential from a slightly different angle. So you cast your net a little bit wider when you're looking to make appointments. Fiona, thank you. Good luck with the politics, if you're absolutely sure that's what you really want to do. I'm always happy to clarify. Ali's tweeted to say, just to get this clear in my mind, if I know of someone really upset about their grades, rather than reassuring them it isn't the end of the world, we are supposed to tell them, yes, it is the end of the world. No, you're supposed to tell them it's not the end of the world, but not in the same breath tell all the people who've done well or who think they matter or who are currently working hard and planning to do well next year that they don't matter. So they do matter, but they're not the end of the world. I didn't think that was confusing, Ali. So here is the end of the world, right? That's the end of the world. The world has ended. And here is today, where you are. There's a huge amount of space between now and the end of the world. And some people are very far down that road. But no one's at the end of the world. It's never going to be the end of the world when your A-levels are bad. But to turn around and say they don't matter at all... well, that's proper stupid. Anna's in Birmingham. Anna, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. I was explaining to your researcher that from my perspective, my A-level results was the gateway from poverty.
Gosh. Tell me more.
I grew up on a council estate, single parent family during the 80s. We had nothing. We had holes in our shoes. We lived in a very cold house. We didn't always have enough to eat.
Gosh.
I recognised very early on, because I'm lucky enough to be reasonably bright, the only way out of that situation for me was an education. It was to university. And I could only get to university at that time through my A-levels. I cannot underscore the importance of my A-levels to where I am now. And I live in a nice house. I have a secure job. I chair a charity. I have the opportunities to me that would not have been possible had I not done my A-levels and gone to university.
Tell me about the moment you opened your envelope.
It was unbelievable. It was life-changing. I still remember it now. I mean, it was a long time ago now, James. It was a long time ago.
Tell me about it.
But I remember that moment. I remember dropping the paper. I remember my hands coming to my mouth, and I remember saying, I did it. I've done it. I'm out. It was life-changing. And one more thing, it's not just about the money or the stability, James. It's about the ability to navigate the world.
Yes.
So my son has autism and ADHD, and I've had to tussle with the education system and with the mental health system in this country. And what's really helped me to be able to do that is to have an education.
I think that is a really important point, actually. And again, I know you don't need telling this, Anna, but I sometimes wonder whether some people do. You're not suggesting for a minute that unless you've got a university education, you definitely can't navigate what you've just described. It just makes it a heck of a lot easier. And it almost gives you tools and vocabularies that you wouldn't otherwise have.
It's the tools to navigate the system. It's about learning to speak nicely. It's learning to say the right words. And yes, you can do that without university, and I know plenty of people that have. But for me, it is easier. And there are members of my family that didn't go to university, didn't take that route, and they do struggle with navigating the systems.
What do you think Gillian Keegan was thinking about yesterday when she said this stuff about not mattering?
I mean, in some ways, I think she was trying to be kind to those individuals that perhaps hadn't got the grades, and I think, like you just mentioned just before I came on the air about, for an individual who hasn't got the grades, that doesn't mean their life's over. But I think it was such a churlish and throwaway way, was just completely undermined the education system to which she is responsible.
That's the amazing thing about it. I was about to do one of my rubbish jokes about, it's a good job she's not in charge of anything then, but she is, nominally in charge of the entire education system that she's just described really to everybody in it as irrelevant and a waste of time. Thank you, Anna. That's a cracking story. Can I ask what the charity does? You don't have to tell me.
It's a multicultural charity. We promote diversity amongst the community and promote diasporas. We're doing a lot of work with asylum seekers at the moment. Precisely
because you understand the difference, the transformative difference that support at the beginning of your journey can make later. Oh, how lovely. Yeah. Thank you, Anna. 29 minutes after 10 is the time. I should mention quickly, actually, we set up a charity in Andy's memory as well to do precisely what he did to help people get into places life-wise and work-wise that they wouldn't otherwise get into. The kind of places that if you went to a school like mine, you could make a couple of phone calls or call in a couple of favours or hook up with a couple of contacts, that kind of thing, and you'd be golden. But a lot of children growing up in different circumstances, it's a world they know nothing about, which is precisely what Anna just pinpointed so perfectly. Thomas Watts is here now with your headlines. It is 10:33. James, my home life involved domestic violence when I was 16. I was predicted A-level results of an E and 2 N's. You put nearlies in brackets. I always thought it stood for nearly as well, but it was non-classified or something like. Anyway, at 17, after a particularly bad threatening attack from my stepdad, I went to live at my dad's. The stable environment changed my learning experience, and I got a C, a D, and an E, which in 1990, same year as me, was enough to get me into university. I got an HND first, and then a Bachelor's of Arts honours. After working hard for many years, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, I ended up as a senior civil servant. This is not a rags to riches story, but without the safe home my dad and stepmother provided, I would never have got A-levels or gone to university. I would never have got the tools to be independent and have the career opportunities that the civil service offers. My dad died this year of cancer, and I am still grateful to him. I'm sure he would respond by saying he was simply doing what was right to be, but gratitude's always healthy. Here's another one as well. A very different story, very different circumstances. But still addressing the question of the importance of A-levels for with the caveat that it's not the end of the world if you haven't done well. Good morning, James. A-levels are crucial, in my opinion, to open the doors that you have been dreaming of, or even doors you didn't know existed, actually, I would say. I was sent to England by my parents to escape the Iran-Iraq war in 1986. I went to the local private school because, as a foreigner, I wasn't allowed into state school. I sat my GCSEs in 1990 and got 7 A's and 3 B's. Then, as a young hormonal man, I became very conceited and arrogant about my abilities. God, I hate people like that. Don't you hate people who become very conceited and arrogant about their abilities? And things got even worse when I received a very low conditional offer from Cambridge to do medicine. So I didn't open a book. I royally messed up my A-levels. I failed them all. I sat down, I remember, in a coffee shop, pondering what on earth had just happened, and decided to get my old ways back and put my head down. I resat my A-levels. I got the A's I needed. I went to a London medical school, and the rest, as they say, is history. 10:35 is the time. Jane's in Ellesmere Port. Jane, what would you like to say?
Good morning, James.
Hello,
it's good
Jane.
to talk to you again.
Likewise.
Yeah. So I work in a further education college in Cheshire, and I teach and support 16 to 19-year-olds. And hearing the Education Secretary this morning, I think her remarks are very, very short-sighted.
Yes.
Yesterday, there were mixed emotions from our students. I didn't attend the college personally on results day, but I kept up to date with all the goings-on. And many students were delighted because they got results that were better than expected. But there were also others who got results that, weren't as expected as well. So, there's a lot of mixed feelings
Of course.
at the moment. And as I was saying to your producer, I also support students who were studying for the BTEC, and
Yes.
their results came out yesterday. And in reference to a previous caller who said, I think her son had ADHD and autism,
Yes.
we have a growing number of students who've got additional learning support needs as well. And if it wasn't for the learning support assistants working alongside the tutors and the academic coaches, those learners wouldn't have achieved the results that they got. So the students that I work with not only pass the coursework, but they also pass the exams thanks to our help.
Fantastic.
And because of us, they're now going to go on to university. They're now going to go on and do their high as well, their HNDs, HNCs.
Opportunities
all
that would
thanks
have
to our
been
help.
would have been out of reach for them in previous generations. Out of reach completely, I think, for many of them. What about you? How important were A-levels to you growing up?
I'm a lot older than the students I work with now. But if it wasn't for my A-levels, I wouldn't have gotten into university. I wouldn't have gone abroad to teach English as a second language and then come back to do my teacher training. So I've now got a PGCE.
Yep.
And I'm now I'm still looking for teaching jobs because I've just qualified. And that brings me to another point that, the A-levels, the degrees have got me to the point where I am now. And one crucial thing to remember is that as you get older, when employers look at your CV and your applications, not only do they look at your qualifications, but they also look at your experience.
Yes.
And going back to what the Education Secretary was saying, I think is very... say, A-levels don't matter. They do.
I mean,
one step leads to another.
I'm always happy to put the boot into politicians, but I suppose that the caveat is that she was probably... I mean, it's not a great caveat for someone who's actually Secretary of State for Education, but when she was talking to one small cohort of people, she completely forgot that she was talking to everybody else in the world as well, I suppose is the kindest thing you can say. She was addressing the issue of young people who haven't done well, but forgetting that everybody else was listening, I suppose is relevant.
I think, you can leave that remark open to interpretation,
Yes.
as it were. So I can see what, if someone, gets some news that they weren't hoping for, the first thing you want to do is reassure them and let them know that they'll be all right.
But not if they're sitting next to someone who's just sweated blood and tears to get straight A's, and you're saying to the fellow who's not done very well, don't worry about it. They're a pile of old nonsense anyway. No one's going to look at them at all in 10 years' time. Very strange. Jane, thank you. Good luck. 10:39 is the time. Rabia is in Dubai. Rabia, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. Nice to speak to you again outside the Mystery Hour.
Yes.
I just wanted to tell your listeners that A-level isn't just a UK degree, it's an international standard.
We're just going to try, and speaking of international standards, Rabbi, we're just going to try and improve that phone line if we can, because it's a little bit croaky. It's coming up to 22:11. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. I'm examining the importance of A-levels. I think everybody knows that doing badly isn't the end of the world, particularly for the kind of people who tell you that it isn't the end of the world. People like Jeremy Clarkson, who went to Repton, or Baron Bethel, who went to Harrow. When they tell you it's not the end of the world, they're possibly not being fully reflective of the world that other people inhabit. But when the Secretary of State for Education comes out and says effectively that they don't matter, don't worry because they don't matter anyway, that's almost unbelievably unhelpful, which is why we've bent over backwards to give her a fire escape, an escape that she didn't mean that, but she's the Secretary of State for Education. You know, these people are so guarded in interview and so trained not to say anything that it should really be quite a big deal that she's ended up with her foot inserted quite so far into her mouth. But of course we live at the moment in a country where Conservative politicians in particular can do whatever the heck they want and no one's ever going to tell them off. We might be talking about Nadine Dorries in the next hour. Chris is in Lyon. Chris, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. First time caller, pleasure to speak to you. Coming from a slightly different angle, I think, in the sense that when I opened my A-level results, I thought probably the worst day of my life. Predicted relatively high grades, A-star A. I ended up with 3 Bs.
Were you stunned? Were you staggered?
Somewhat. Yeah, I kind of lived a little of that sort of life at school where you think you're kind of top of the class, you think you're going to do incredibly well. I was head of school as well, and then you end up with 3 Bs, and it's a little bit deflating, to be honest.
I'm sure.
But I was hoping to do economics, applying to sort of Oxford, Leeds, big universities. Had to go through the clearing process, and the only way that I can doing economics was to do politics with economics at Loughborough University. And honestly, it's going to a top 5 university now, Loughborough, incredible place. With 3 Bs, incredible opportunity.
Yes.
And because of that, I was able to do an Erasmus year in France.
Oh, they've abolished that. Are you doing that now? No.
So I did my Erasmus year. I came back to finish my studies, and basically because of the opportunities that I had at Loughborough, I'm able to come back to France and do a master's.
Oh, wow.
So I'm basically doing a master's here in international public affairs.
And well, it tallies with what Rabia was about to tell us about the international cachet of the A-level. Do you know who else did the Erasmus scheme?
Please, love.
Suella Braverman.
Fascinating. You never thought it, would you?
Well, I mean, she's very enthusiastic about abolishing it for everybody else, of course. But you just snuck in before the axe fell, or the guillotine, to keep things French. You just snuck in before the guillotine fell. There it is.
It's a crying shame.
Well, I mean, it is.
It's an absolute nightmare.
In a normal country, it would be a matter of enormous consequence. But as we just alluded to a moment ago, it's not really a normal country. Thank you, Chris. Not the perfect phone line. So I will crack on. A lot of love for Anna, actually, an earlier caller. Anna is speaking now on LBC and resonating with me, says Bed's Babe. A-levels were so important to my upward mobility, and I really knew it then. More than 10 years later, I know it even more. So important was it that I did a year again to ensure that I could say that I had the A-levels. Gennaro is in, well, I'm going to say Reims, Gennaro, even though it's spelt with an F on my screen.
It is Reims, yeah.
Okay. Right, what would you like to say?
So, I was just telling you research when I phoned up that I guess...
Normally, when people say researcher, I normally point out that they're actually producers, but given how this person has spelt Reims, I might actually demote them to work experience at the moment. Go on. What do you want to say? What's Gillian Keegan up to?
So I mean, first of all, I don't necessarily agree with what she said, considering her position.
Sure.
But I guess from my background, I don't want to be the Jeremy Clarkson, but I didn't do very well in my A-levels.
No, okay.
But I am in a pretty good position now, I would say. I mean, I got a degree and then I got a master's degree, and I'm kind of doing well for myself. But what I wanted to sort of say was, I've got a 3-year-old child, and maybe 12 years is probably quite a way off. 13 years is a way off for me to think about.
Well, you think that, mate? Trust me. Just blink and you'll be there. Take it from me.
That's it. So for me, you know, I really want my child to do well in their A levels, purely for the fact that, you know, I guess for me it was a struggle to get back into education afterwards, and you know, I'd be 4 years ahead of where I am now in my career if I'd have done my A levels or done well in my A levels. You know, at the time, well, I mean, I've just found out I've got ADHD, so
Okay.
for me. You know, for me, school, there's a lot of things that I did at school which kind of make sense now. But obviously, where I'm going with this is the fact that it took me a while to kind of get back into education again.
To catch up.
And, you know, exactly. And I wouldn't want that for my child, if that makes sense.
Yeah, of course it does.
I would always push for them to do well. But, you know, short of being one of those parents... Because I know my parents are like that, and it's only sort of, you know, 10 years down the line when I realise, oh, there you go, that's why they were like that.
Well, it's a middle class thing, actually, that aspect, because if you're really posh, it doesn't matter. And if you are from a background where no one even conceives of the role that education can play, as Anna put it best in Birmingham, as a path out of poverty, then you don't get the... Often you don't get the things to aspire to, and that's why Gillian Keegan's comments were so unhelpful. But yeah, I mean, also, you know, your grades were good enough to get you into university. There'll be people today pondering the possibility that road is now closed to them. It's 10:45. 10:49 is the time. Paul's in Wiltshire. He writes, as a black 18-year-old boy, poor, council estate, single parent, free school meals, etc., passing my A-levels, brackets, AAAB, by the way, close brackets, proved to be the start of an amazing journey. Not just for me, but for my family, James. 30 years in law, travelling the country and the world, talking to young people, often from the most disadvantaged backgrounds, about the importance of education in their lives. And in one interview, the Secretary of State for Education has undone much of the work that I and others have been trying to do. I can't contradict you, Paul, because you see what you see, but I hope you're wrong. I think you're wrong. I don't think it will be that damaging in the long term, but it is, and I really hope it's not an indication of ideology, conservative ideology, because if you peddle the sort of politics that this lot do, then obviously an educated electorate is kryptonite. The last thing you want if you are peddling the status quo, peddling inequality, claiming, and of course, most recently, claiming that refugees are somehow responsible for the suboptimal existences of people born here, then the last thing you want is a well-informed electorate. With a well-informed, well-educated electorate, of course, there probably wouldn't have been any Brexit. 10:50 today. Do we keep a note still of how long it takes for me to shoehorn it into the conversation? Matthew's in Leicester. Matthew, what would you like to say?
Good morning. I just wanted to, I think, reflect on what others have said previously, how powerful education is as a tool to breaking social barriers, breaking the cycle of poverty. And for lots of families, you know, they'll be opening their A-level results today, and this might be their child's, you know, that might be their family's first entrance into university. It's a very big moment for a lot of families' lives. And then for the education secretary to say what she said really kind of goes against how much she should be valuing how powerful education is, you know, as a tool for these young people, you know, going into the next stage of their lives.
I mean, I'm more interested in the stories that we've heard today, albeit that we probably wouldn't have heard quite so many quite so special stories if Gillian Keegan hadn't stuck her foot in her mouth yesterday. And I don't know if she's apologised or backtracks, but she knows. I'm just looking at the profile that she gave to Further Education Week, which is where the fact that she was the only kid in her school to get 10 O-levels made its way into the public domain. So she knows how transforming exam results can be. And yet here she is telling every pupil in the country that they don't really matter. Do you teach, Matthew? What's your sort of interest in the issue?
I'm a secondary school teacher. I teach GCSE students.
Right.
I don't teach A-level. So
how do you walk that tightrope? How do you? Because you don't want to add to the burdens that these kids carry. They've already got we've already charged them with saving the planet and sundry other existential crises. How do you communicate to them how important it is, how that these things can be, for example, routes out of poverty without scaring the horses?
I think it's really just you just make it their passion. You just you try and share your passion for your subject and try and make them as passionate as they are about education as you, because lots of children don't have the same attitudes towards their education as others do, and you really need to. It is quite hard work to get them to acknowledge their education, but it's also acknowledging that these children, this period of their lives, whether it's GCSEs or A-levels, is an extremely stressful time for their life.
Yes, that's the thing that worries me, actually. I read a lot and talk a lot, and you'll be more across this than I am, about the mental health crises engulfing that cohort, these generations, and the other pressures, unique pressures, new pressures that they have to deal with. This is one of the oldest pressures. I think we all put ourselves under pressure to do well in exams, and there needs to be a balance. But I think Julian Keegan got it completely wrong yesterday. That seems to be something about which we all agree. This is nice. Thank you, Matthew. This is rather nice from Rob. If you wonder why we do what we do every day, Rob writes, I've been at a loss about what to do in my life for a few years now, James. Listening to the last hour has inspired me to get back into education, and I'm currently filling in an application. Thank you, from another lad who grew up in Rochdale. 10:54 is the time. Kesbury is in Cambridge. Kesbury, what would you like to say?
Hi. So my story about A-levels is kind of a redemption arc for my GCSEs.
Oh, yes.
I kind of like to think of it as like something that everyone needs to hear, and every kid that I walk past, anyone that I see doing art, I always tell them this. But in GCSEs, I practically got D's and C's for all of my subjects. Everything was I just barely passed everything, which me and my mum were really happy about.
Right.
So then my mum put me on to do an extended diploma BTEC for art and design. And during that 2 years, which is equivalent to 3 A-levels, I wanted to go to Oxford. So because I scraped my GCSEs, I went to a really low-performing sixth form, and I just messed around and did art for those 2 years. So nobody really took that seriously.
Okay. I've got no idea where this is going, Kesbury. I'm all ears. I'm on the edge of my seat here.
So nobody took that seriously whatsoever. My mum came in, was like, this is what we want to do. We want her to go to Oxford. We want her to study fine art. That's what we want her to do, right? Everyone was like, no. Predicted grades are a really big thing. I don't know why people aren't talking about predicted grades, because predicted grades basically decide, if you can even apply to that uni. So I had to beg and get my mum in and everything to, my mum was really the driving force in this, to get my predicted grades as DDD, which is AAA. And I had to be top performance on the next 2 years. So the 2 years passed, I got an interview from Oxford, and I eventually got in. I achieved D-star DD, which is A-star AA. And so now I've graduated from Oxford. I got a 2-1 from the Ruskin, Oxford University. And Oxford, my friends all came from the same background as me and did that. And without that kind of support from people around you. I mean, like, sometimes you kind of have the teachers will kind of pull you down and be like, do you really want to do that? I had that my whole education. Have some belief, haven't you?
What do you mean when you say D star was A? What does that? What do you mean?
So the BTEC is graded differently. So BTEC students got their results yesterday.
Yeah, okay, no, fine. I just missed that bit of the conversation. What are you going to do now? What are you going to do with your fine art degree?
So I've done, my dissertation was on politics, the current state of politics. Been listening to LBC my whole life. And so I did that compared to
I can only be responsible for what goes on between 10 and 1.
No, I blame my mum. Don't worry, I blame my mum. She's always put it on. It's
ridiculous. That's terrible. No wonder you're so confused.
Yeah, exactly. So I had to put that in writing as my final dissertation, right? And compare it to satire and say, look at these events. How can satire make more sense than that? So I coined it delusion complexity. These past 6 years, I looked at the austerity, I looked at the pandemic, I looked at Brexit. Now I want to study a PhD in political science. and hopefully abroad in the States somewhere, because I want to do delusion complexities across the pond.
How exciting.
So like looking at the American relationship and British relationship, how we influence each other, and this kind of craziness that we're in today.
Well, you're not unlike my job. You won't be short of material, Kesbury. I think we can be both confident of that for the foreseeable future. Take care. And I always feel a bit odd saying good luck, but when I say it, I do mean it. It's not like I say at the end of every call, go good luck, go carefully, Godspeed. I do mean it, and today's been one of those days where people are on the cusp of big things. It's coming up to 10:59. Phil's in Birmingham. Last word on this, I think. Phil, what would you like to say?
Hey, James. I did my GCSEs way back in 1996 or whatever, and I failed one of them spectacularly, the English exam, which I got an A for in the mock, which was brilliant. I got an E because I did the thing where it was like answer 2 questions from this section and 1 question from that section.
You got it
the
wrong.
Other way around.
Oh, you prune.
The other way around.
That's the first thing they say. Make sure you read the instructions. That is literally the only thing most people can remember about being taught exam technique. Read the bloody instructions.
I was never great at exams, but then
Well, I'm not surprised you didn't read the instructions, did you?
Well, I did, but then misinterpreted and got nervous and
Oh, bless you.
messed it up. But onto the A levels, or actually straight after that, I did an NVQ in computer engineering because people were like, "You've always been good with computers. Why don't you do that?" Because young people never know what to do. They're always rushed, and I imagine they're even more rushed now.
Yes.
Than they were. And I didn't come from I came from a working class background too.
So it wasn't presumed that you would progress in that way.
No. So sixth form. Going back to sixth form after I did the NVQ gave me a chance to sort of redeem my GCSEs. Do some A levels and get some other skills too. And also, like your other callers have been talking about, get some extra experience of not being a kid in school and, growing up a bit.
Yeah, definitely.
So it gave some experience too, as well as some qualifications.
And that equips you. Well, that's nice, actually. That's a nice little counterbalance to some of the critiques of Gillian Keegan. It is important to reassure people who haven't done brilliantly or haven't done as well as they hoped. And there are new avenues and other things they can do. But the broad thrust of her contention that it doesn't matter at all was both ridiculous and deeply regrettable, which kind of sums up almost every public intervention from almost every member of the cabinet these days. It's coming up. Well, it's just gone 11 o'clock. You can tell by the tinkling in the background. We're definitely going to do this today. Whether we do it next or whether we do it at 12 o'clock, I'm not 100% sure. I shall take a view during the news. But is it time to stop laughing at Nadine Dorries? No, of course it's not. Is it time to stop just laughing at Nadine Dorries and extend our interest in her to questions about the deeper malaise that she represents? How can anybody possibly get away with what she's getting away with? So we should probably start with this. Dorries! Watch. This is our frequent but irregular update on the state of Nadine Dorries' resignation. It is now 21 plus 31 is 52, 60, 70 days since Nadine Dorries, former Secretary of State for Culture and Sport, since Nadine Dorries announced that she would be resigning as a Member of Parliament with, and I quote, immediate effect. 70 days. Nadine Dorries is still an MP. Dorries! Watch. But, of course, you can't stop laughing at her. But I wonder whether we need to start taking the story a little bit more seriously as well, because this is somebody who, as far as I can tell, doesn't just continue to draw a parliamentary salary and, of course, accrue various pension benefits and what have you, but I think she's still got at least one of her daughters on the payroll in Parliament as a researcher or a caseworker. She's had 2 daughters. Martin Samuel writes brilliantly in the Times today. Martin Samuel, for the record, if you're not familiar with his work, is the best sports journalist in the country, the best football writer in the country, and since moving to the Times from the Mail, has been allowed to extend his scope into non-sports related topics. And he is a very, very dwindling number of writers that when I remember that today's the day their column appears, I find myself flicking to it with joy, or at least with enthusiasm. It's quite incredible. Only this week, in lieu of meeting the people, sorry to interrupt myself, but when someone is really beyond the pale, when so Martin was on the Mail until quite recently. Nadine Dorries is on the Mail, and one former Mail journalist is here having a swing at another Mail journalist. Now, he very much ploughs his own furrow, but that, in the context of newspaper journalism, that's not commonplace. But he makes a brilliant point. In lieu of meeting the people she purportedly represents, Dorries delivered an insightful article about the time her daughter's exam results were so poor she crashed the car. Fortunately, both her daughters subsequently recovered to find gainful employment in the parliamentary office of an MP for Mid Bedfordshire, with the public purse delivering a combined salary of up to £80,000. That's what actually got me today, because I've enjoyed doing Dorries Watch. I've enjoyed seeing other media outlets catch up with the mischievous approach to the amount of time that has now elapsed between Nadine Dorries announcing her resignation and today. And I found it funny. I've long found her ridiculous and profoundly unpleasant, I have to say. And she's not a comical figure. Some of the stuff that she tweeted and disseminated about me, some of the stuff she said about me in select committees would be absolutely defamatory and libelous. But she's protected by parliamentary privilege. There's stuff she can say in select committee because it's covered by parliamentary privilege that if she said in public, I could have taken her for hundreds of thousands of pounds. And there was one tweet that she retweeted as well, accusing me of all manner of vile offences that probably would have been defamatory as well. But I wasn't really minded to pursue it at the time. But the idea that she then ends up in charge of the online harms bill, that feeling I have is 52% absurd ridiculousness. What's the word when you're laughing at something? 52% mockery, 48% horror. Right? I think I've overlooked the horror element of her career and where it is now. So we've been very tireless chroniclers of how despicable she is in every imaginable way, not just, of course, libelling me personally, but also being so stupid and so unequipped to do the job that Boris Johnson gave her, that she ended up humiliating herself on an incredible scale. She told lies, of course, about a Channel 4 programme. Chris Bryant was a fairly tireless tracker of her calumnies and incompetencies, talking about the need to privatise Channel 4 without knowing that it wasn't be publicly funded. I mean, happening in real time in public. Anyone possessed of shame or enough intelligence to appreciate how unintelligent they were would have scurried away from public life at 200 miles an hour and never shown their face in public again. But it's a great gift to be as thick as mince. It's a very liberating characteristic. If you're really, really stupid, if you're too stupid to even begin to understand how stupid you are, then you have a superpower in the right-wing establishment. You could get a column on the Daily Mail or a television programme on GBB's or the other one. You just don't even begin to contemplate how stupid and how unpleasant you are. Everybody else is an enemy. The culture of victimhood, the poor me. Absolutely incredible. And with Dorries, you get an extra dimension where she literally says in public that she became an MP because God told her to. So she's kind of ring-fenced her reputation on that side. Well, you can't criticise me. That's like criticising God, that is. She's hideous in every imaginable way, but 52% mockery, 48% horror. And I think that we might have misjudged that slightly. I think we might have laughed too much and not gnashed our teeth enough, because the numbers are stunning. Henry Riley dug into it for us, didn't he, not long ago? He looked at how long it was since she'd spoken in the House of Commons. So you are a constituent in Mid Bedfordshire, and your MP hasn't said a word in the House of Commons for over a year. July 2022. There was a period of British politics when we were probably, hopefully, at our lowest, where she wouldn't shut up. Do you remember? It was like a sort of it was like a battery-powered doll that had gone haywire, and you couldn't imagine if you've packed up all the kids' toys and shoved them to the back of the attic and accidentally turned on some incredibly irritating toy that just keeps saying the same words over and over. I've got a lovely new dress. I've got a lovely new dress. I've got a lovely new dress. And you're in the attic trying to get the camping stuff out for the summer. And it's so far, you don't know where it is. It just won't stop talking. I've got a lovely new dress. I've got a lovely new dress. I'm the Secretary of State for Culture, Media and Sport. And you're going through bags and you just can't get the blood. It just won't stop. She was like that for a while. And now she hasn't spoken in the House of Commons since July 2022. Guess how many times she's voted this year in the whole of 2023? It is now August the 18th, 2020, the year of our Lord, 2023. Guess how many times she's voted? Go on, have a guess. Have a guess. Say a number. How many? How many do you think? Lower. How many do you think? Lower. 6 times. 6 times. 6 times. 6 times. I don't know what you do for a living, but imagine if you'd only turned up 6 times in the whole of 2002. Imagine you're a taxi driver. How many hours have you spent behind the wheel? Well, I've got in the car 6 times. Hey, you work in a shop. How many loaves of bread have you sold this? 6. 6. What else have you done? Nothing. I've been moonlighting as I've got a newspaper column, I've got a weird television show, but I know my actual proper day job, the thing that, you know, that would be 6 times. 6 times. You're a doctor, right? Oh, you're a doctor. How many patients have you seen? There's 6. Oh, in the whole of 2006? Yeah, 6. 6 doctors. When do you think she last held a surgery in her constituency? Go on, have a guess. It's now August 2023. That's not an opinion, that's counting. It's August 2023, right? I've got a lovely new dress. When do you think she last held a surgery in her constituency? March 2020. So 6 votes in 2023. Not a single syllable. And I appreciate that is what you might describe as a mixed blessing. I mean, do be careful what you wish for. On one level, her silence is to be welcomed, but it should be silence accompanied by departure from the House of Commons. Silence while still trousering salaries, quite possibly paying at least one of her daughters accruing pension benefits, and, of course, preventing the good people of Mid-Bedfordshire from having a sane and functional member of Parliament. These are all problems. The fact that she's not, well, of course she is speaking in public, isn't she? She's back on the Daily Mail malfunctioning toy column. But I don't get it, actually. We've laughed too much. I think we've laughed too much. And I'm not turning into Arnold Schwarzenegger. Or who said don't get mad, get even? It wasn't Arnold Schwarzenegger, was it? Anyway, it'll come to me in a minute. But I think what we've got here, a bit like Rees-Mogg, we've got a politician of such unprecedented ridiculousness that we've forgotten how serious her awfulness should be. So I've wondered a lot, I've written a lot about how Brexit plus Boris Johnson created an environment in which only idiots and charlatans and cowards could be promoted. There is literally no way you could serve in Boris Johnson's cabinet without being an idiot, a charlatan or a coward. So the idiots got promoted because they truly believed the absolute bilge that he'd been spouting since Brexit. The charlatans were part of the project, part of the plan, part of the gang. And the cowards were the ones who knew exactly what was going on but didn't have the guts to say so. And the ones that did, of course, got slung out of the party in 2019. So I've expended quite a lot of energy on trying to work out how we ended up in a place where only idiots, charlatans and cowards could end up in the actual cabinet of our actual government. But I haven't expended any energy. I've certainly never asked you why. I mean, Julie asks immediately, with more incision than almost any journalist at the BBC has managed to display in the last 3 years. Why has Sunak not removed the whip? Why has he not just removed the whip? I'll tell you why, because he's scared. He's scared of everything, isn't he, Rishi Sunak, when you look at him? Scared of his own shadow. Scared of everything. The only thing he's not scared about is demonising refugees in the hope of securing a few cheap votes, which he's probably already got anyway, because the kind of voter that this rhetoric of Suella Braverman appeals to is almost certainly in the base already. So, how has this happened? Genuinely. Is it a coma morning? Is it a morning where I wake up after 5 years in a coma and you tell me about an MP who hasn't spoken in over a year, hasn't held a surgery in over 3, and has deigned to vote in the House of Commons on just 6 occasions? Well, she's writing a book as well, isn't she? Don't you just hate people who are writing books at the moment? She's writing a book. She's doing it's just insane. Look, for the record, I live in an absolutely crackpot country. So if people want to pay Nadine Dorries to write a newspaper column, present a television show, or indeed write a book, that's fine. That's absolutely fine. Who the hell would want to watch it, read it, or look at it? I have absolutely no idea. But it's a free country, and rich people can pay idiots to do whatever the hell they want. That's fine. But she's an MP. She is a member of Parliament. A member of Parliament who has done nothing in her constituency for over 3 years. She has done nothing in the House of Commons for over a year, out loud, and has voted on just 6 occasions. So I'm nostalgic for the times when Chris Grayling was the biggest idiot in the cabinet. Actually, a couple of people pointing that. You're right. You do almost miss the days when Chris Grayling was as bad as it got. We probably owe Chris Grayling an apology on this programme. We had a lot of fun at Chris Grayling's expense. I can't completely remember why. Something to do with boats that didn't exist. But my goodness me, compared to what's happened since, Chris Grayling was a statesman. Chris Grayling was like Palmerston. Chris Grayling was one of the finest parliamentarians of our time compared to Nadine Dorries. AWOL. So how has this happened? I mean, I don't know that you're going to be able to help me with this, are you? I might just get chalked up as one of my strange little divert, but I hope you can. I hope you've got I don't really know why. I know why Johnson couldn't sack her. Well, I've got theories about that I'll keep to myself, but I know the public reasons why Johnson couldn't sack her, which is that she was one of the people pretending or truly believed. She started crying when he pulled out of the leadership contest in 2016. Did you know that? She actually started crying. I checked for the new book. So, 2 questions. I mean, how has this been permitted? How have we ended up living in a country where an MP can do this? That's the question, isn't it? That is the question. It's not to be or not to be. That was last week's question. This week's question is, how have we, you and me, both of us, and I don't know, mate, are you a Brexiter still? Is anyone still actually a Brexiter, or do you just have to pretend you are because the alternative is so crushingly humiliating? How have you ended up in a country where an MP can... Because you don't approve of it. You can't possibly approve of an MP not turning up to speak for a year, not having a surgery in a constituency for more than 3, voting 6 times in the whole of 20... How has this happened? How have we ended up in a country, in a democracy, in a parliamentary democracy, where a parliamentarian can extract the urine on an industrial scale and get no sanction or punishment whatsoever? So we will add to that question, how have we ended up in a country where a parliamentarian can do this? And add to that, why has Rishi Sunak not disciplined her? 0345 6060 973. Remember, any answer you want, because some of it's obvious and some of it isn't. But just imagine this, and I don't do this often, but I'll do it today. Just imagine this was a Labour MP. Just imagine this was a Labour MP. Daughter on the payroll, absent without leave, filling her pockets with media appearances and not doing any of the job expected of an MP. Imagine it was Labour. Imagine it was Diane. Imagine it was Diane Abbott doing this. You would hear of nothing else. So what's going on? How have we ended up here? And why aren't they doing anything about it? 0345 6060 973. Dorries Watch just went turbo. 23 minutes after 11. Sometimes I'm spoilt for choice on ways into a question. I mean, what would happen if you adopted the approach to your job that Nadine Dorries has adopted to hers? What would happen to you? That'd be quite a good phone-in. I'd be fired, James. I'd be court-martialed, James. I'd be out on my ear by tea time, James. I'd be shot at dawn, James. What would happen to you if you adopted the approach to your job that Nadine Dorries has adopted to hers? Gary says she's practising for the House of Lords. That's not fair. It's funny, but it's not fair. But really, the broader question, what does it say about our society? What's happened? Pete's in Greenwich. Pete, what would you like to say?
Well, I think an interesting... Oh, good morning, James.
Hello.
Good show.
It's all right.
I think an interesting aspect of the Nadine Dorries saga is why no one in the Conservative Party at national level, in terms of the people that run it, are acting against her because she's in breach of its own constitution.
Yes.
Its own constitution says that no member of Parliament of either house shall have engaged or engaged in conduct which brings or is likely to bring the party into disrepute. Now, she very clearly is.
She very clearly is. I don't think we'd find it. She very, very clearly is. I don't think we'd find anyone who would argue that she isn't, would we? I mean, don't forget also that the Privileges Committee found that she'd engaged in a concerted campaign to undermine them as well.
Indeed. So the question is, why is no one in the Conservative Party implementing its own constitution?
Do you want the good news or the bad news?
Oh, well, I'll go with the good first of all.
Well, the good news is I ask the questions on this programme, mate, not you. And the bad news is you've got to answer your own question now. Why is the Conservative Party not enacting its own constitution, Pete?
Well, I think it's a measure of how far the Conservative Party has fallen.
Yes.
I mean, it's a bit like the Republican Party and Trump in the States.
Except that Trump still has the Republican Party in the palm of his hand. Johnson is toast now. Johnson is gone. He's a fellow Daily Mail. Good God, you couldn't make it up, Pete, could you? He's also now a Daily Mail columnist.
No,
so
I agree.
Are they still in thrall? Are they still in thrall? Is Rishi Sunak frightened of doing what everybody knows he should do with Nadine Dorries because of Boris? I can't join the dots, Pete, at the moment.
Well, it's not just Rishi Sunak; it's everyone.
Yeah, I know, but he's the head honcho, isn't he? He's Mr. Professionalism, accountability, and integrity.
Yeah, but you've got people like Greg Hands, who's the chair of the Conservative Party.
Yeah.
I mean, where is he? Why?
I don't think he is. I think his official title now is head of mediocre tweets. Actually, I think his job's been retitled. Head of repetitive mediocre tweets isn't it?
Very good.
Well, you tell me. I mean, you can say it's a mark of how far it's fallen, but that's not an explanation. That's a description.
Well, either she knows where the body's buried.
What? Yeah. Or something's just so fundamentally broken that people are looking at it, sucking on a pen and going, oh, it's a write-off, that is. There's no point even trying to fix it. I can't get this back on. Rishi Sunak looking at the Conservative Party and said, it's going to be a right. It's an insurance job. I don't think we can get this one back on the road. And Nadine Dorries is the best example of that.
Yeah, and the great work that LBC has been doing on trying to locate her in her constituency, which I think was a couple of days ago.
Yes, no, it was Henry Riley down in Mid-Bedfordshire yesterday, trying to find her.
I mean,
no joy.
What a pass! What a pass that the nation has come to, that a national radio programme can send out a reporter asking people...
Have you seen your MP?
Yeah.
But that's actually... I think that might have been the moment where I found myself wondering whether actually we were missing something by just turning it into a comedy story.
Yeah. Oh, it's not a comedy.
It's really not a comedy, is it?
No, it's a tragic description.
Well, I set you up for that one, Pete. It's not a comedy, is it, Pete? It's definitely not a comedy. No, it's a tragedy. I feel you're straight, man. I think we're both. I can tell we're both struggling. Genuinely, but I mean, explain it in context. of the Conservative decline. You're looking at a party that has eaten itself. You've got people like 30p Leenock promoted to deputy chairman so that he can come on and tell refugees to F off, except he uses the language that I wouldn't use in front of you. You've got, all sorts of characters. Greg Hands, who Pete refers to, just spending his life on Twitter, putting up really mediocre memes, sub-mediocre memes on Twitter, constantly regurgitating that letter that Liam Byrne left in the Treasury in 2010. Like that lands anywhere. You've got them coming out. You've got what's his chops ordering staff at a processing centre for lone children to take down cartoons because that might actually comfort the children who are turning up alone. I mean, it is actually incredible what's happened. But is Nadine Dorries simply another symptom of a wider malaise, or can you pinpoint precisely why she is being permitted to behave with such utter contempt for her constituents? I mean, forget about party loyalties, forget about right-wing media, forget about all the stuff I wang on about on a daily basis. Why is Rishi Sunak letting Nadine Dorries treat her constituents with such undisguised contempt? Now, if you listen to this programme, you've known forever how she feels about constituents and voters. But my goodness me, if you were labouring under the illusion that she was in any way worthy of her office, this has been the mother of all wake-up calls. Why is Rishi Sunak tolerating it, permitting it, complicit in it? 0345 6060 973. Thomas Watts is here now with your headlines. It's 11:33. It's a crying shame. It's a national humiliation, and it is. And it's not just that. I mean, I've missed a trick here already. It's not just the fact that Nadine Dorries, who tries to shut down all criticism by claiming that it's misogynistic or that it's bullying, when you've seen the kind of bile that she unleashes on people unprompted and undeserved. Incredible hypocrisy. But it's not just the question about the country. Isn't just about how anyone can get away with being as obviously awful as she is, and as negligent, and as contemptuous of her constituents. But it's how that now gets rewarded. So is she on Rupert Murdoch's one, or the other one, or the Andrew Neil one, the Rupert Murdoch one? So these weird new television stations that nobody watches, that are owned by billionaires who want to influence public discourse. So they're paying millions and millions and millions of pounds for programmes that nobody watches, but which then get reported elsewhere in the media or go on social media, and that means that the owners get to influence public discourse, you see. So they're paying. If here at LBC, you've got to make money. It's a commercial enterprise. You start losing money, they start knocking on your door and asking you, what's this Dorries Watch business? It's not. You start losing money, you've got a problem. It might take you a while to turn a profit, but it's a very different business model over at GBB's. That is spending millions and millions and millions of pounds so that the owners can essentially introduce in conspiracy theories and various other nonsenses to public discourse. That's how it looks to me anyway. You're welcome to disagree, although I'd love to hear your arguments. So we live in a country where not only can a parliamentarian behave with utter contempt for both the party constitution, as Pete pointed out, for her constituents, as everybody's pointed out, and for the parliamentary democracy itself, because you can't have a representative democracy if no one's representing you. It's not just that she gets away with it. It's that Paul Dacre, the editor-in-chief of the Daily Mail, and Rupert Murdoch, over at News International, News Corp, they get their checkbooks out and say, well done. Come on. So I say to you, what would happen if you treated your job in the way that she has treated hers? And you say to me, well, I'd be fired by tea time, James. I'd be court-martialed. I'd be shot at dawn. And what nobody says to me is, well, if I treated my job with the utter contempt that she's treated her job, James, Rupert Murdoch and Paul Dacre would give me enormous cheques to peddle bilge. That's the country we live in. That's not normal. Not just getting away with it, but getting rewarded, getting like Boris Johnson leaves the House of Commons in abject disgrace. Abject disgrace. Found in contempt and then found in contempt of the contempt. Utterly unprecedented. What did the Daily Mail do? Give them £1 million to write about Barbie. This is not normal. 11:36 is the time. Kathy's in Plymouth. Kathy, what on earth is going on?
I've been given permission, actually, by your producer, to read you a short quote by Noam Chomsky, which really, I think, explains what's going on and why we have such abysmal government and opposition.
I just need to clarify something.
Right?
I give permission for what happened.
I know.
Talk
I knew you were going to say that.
Talk about getting above your station. How did she phrase it? Did she sound all grand and Thatcher-like?
Oh, very, very much.
This is my husband and I.
Yes. Almost frightened me.
Well, welcome to my world. I crucially grant you permission to read your very short quote from Noam Chomsky.
Because it's so pertinent.
Let's have a listen.
Right. As long as the general population is passive, apathetic, diverted to consumerism or hatred of the vulnerable, then the powerful can do as they please, and those who survive will be left to contemplate the outcome.
Two thoughts. The first is that Chomsky, like everybody else, of course, has his flaws. There have indeed been problems in some of his contributions to public discourse, although that isn't one of them. The second thought is I'm literally putting the finishing touches to my next book, and at the moment I'm missing a quote for the very front of it. I've got a quote at the beginning of every chapter, but I haven't got a quote at the very front of the whole book. And that, Kathy, that problem might just have been solved.
Right. It's so pertinent.
Isn't it?
I mean, if we lived in France, we'd be up in arms about Nadine Dorries. We'd be banging on doors and thronging in the streets, and nothing is being done because
nobody cares.
Not even our opposition, is saying this is not on.
Why aren't the opposition doing it? That's a great point.
Because of the press. Because they're frightened of getting out of touch with the press.
You can't go after a Daily Mail columnist, boss. Are you mad? What do you think would happen if you went after You can't go after someone who's on the Daily Mail and the Rupert Murdoch payroll.
That's why you've got the passive aggressiveness. Apatheticness. Passive, apathetic people.
Read it again.
As long as the general population is passive, apathetic, diverted to consumerism or hatred of the vulnerable, that one is very important.
Isn't it just?
Then the powerful can do as they please, and those who survive will be left to contemplate the outcome.
Kathy, thank you very much. If this was A-level day, I'd give you an A star. There it is, right there, in a flipping nutshell. Well, it can't all be there because we're still asking the question. But in terms of the philosophy that underpins what we're describing, that's going to take some beating. In terms of the mechanisms, the mechanics of it, why is Rishi Sunak not doing more? That's going to be about him. And some of the questions are going to be about her, going to be about Nadine Dorries. But my goodness me, what an ugly, ugly, ugly business this is. David's in Sheffield. David, what would you like to say?
Yeah, good morning, James.
Hello, David.
I don't think I'm going to get your A star.
Well, you never know, mate. That's not the attitude. Come on.
But I was slightly less apathetic than the reference made in that last quote.
Yeah, me too.
I did the very British thing, and I emailed IPSA.
Yes.
About this precise issue and asked.
So the Parliamentary Standards Authority.
Yeah.
Yes.
And asked how someone could draw a salary and be absent for so long and so devoid of any commitment to her duties. Yeah. And they did actually respond.
What did they say?
It took them about a week.
That's not
bad. They said, "Thank you very much. We are the department that sets salaries, deals with personnel, etc. We are, but the only time that you can stop someone drawing a salary is if the MP is subject to some sort of misconduct proceedings."
I mean, well, there's another question. How can this not constitute misconduct?
Absolutely.
How is absenteeism? In my job, I mean, it's absenteeism. I suppose she's not contractually obliged to turn up, so a lawyer could probably wriggle off that hook. But what would happen to most people if they simply didn't turn up?
Well, I am an employment lawyer.
Oh, that's convenient.
In my day job. But I think you're right. I don't think there is a requirement to attend for the payment of the salary. But what other engagement or job in this country allows you to draw salary whilst providing zero consideration for the contract that you did enter into, which was to stand as an MP? And it is scandalous. I can understand why the opposition don't press on this, although I think they should. They probably don't press on it because there will inevitably be MPs on that side of the House which will not be as egregious as Nadine Dorries, but probably don't perform their duties to an acceptable level. And therefore, once you unpeel that, all that will happen is everyone will pile on to the MPs elsewhere, and you get into this, they're all as bad as each other.
Yeah, I've seen people try to...
They are not.
No, I've seen people try to use David Lammy's show on LBC as a counterbalance to Nadine Dorries, and although it is, objectively ridiculous, it gives idiots ammunition, doesn't it?
Yeah, it was. I mean, I thought you were really nice and cute about your alternative theories. I won't mention what mine would be as well, but I suspect they're similar.
Yes.
But, it is laughable. And this country has been... Well, I think most people are so turned off by politics now because they think everyone's the same. And, in fact, they're not.
No, that's the worst imaginable outcome for a democracy when you have unprecedentedly awful people in power and a population that thinks all the options would be identical, that everybody else is exactly the same. I think Keir Starmer is disappointing a lot of people at the moment, whether for fair reasons or not, but the idea that there is any comparison whatsoever between the cabal of corruption and depravity that Boris Johnson brought into Westminster and that Rishi Sunak has completely failed to sanitise is it's just objectively absurd, isn't it?
Why don't we ask the Taxpayers Alliance
what they think about this? That's a very good point. Yes, they will, no doubt. I can't believe they haven't issued a press release that's made its way almost unchanged onto the front page of the Daily Telegraph, David.
Quite, absolutely. I mean, I do feel like spending a little bit of my time investigating how somebody who is a taxpayer could actually bring some proceedings against her.
Yes. Well, let me know. Let me know if you do. I can certainly offer you some media coverage, which is not necessarily something you could take for granted in other contexts. But yeah, I mean, breach of some sort of unwritten contract. I don't know. It's incredible. If you were in Mid-Bedfordshire, another letter. I think this is the third one I've seen from one of the local councils, just asking her what the hell she thinks she's playing at. This is Shefford Town Council, and I think it's the third we've seen. Ken Pollard, the town mayor of Sheffield. Following dear Ms. Dorries, following a discussion at the full council meeting of Shefford Town Council on Friday the 28th of July, I've been asked to write to you formally on behalf of the residents of Shefford to raise the town's concerns and frustration at the continuing lack of representation for the people of Mid-Bedfordshire at Westminster. I mean, come on. Brexit. Remember Brexit? What did they all tell you about Brexit? Yeah, taking back control, representation, Parliament is sovereign. Oh, look, here's a massive Brexiter taking the absolute Michael out of parliamentary democracy and her... You're going to be furious, aren't you, over at the Mail? You're going to be spitting nails over at Murdoch Towers. An actual MP, after you've taken back control, just weeing it all up a wall. You're not going to stand for... Well, actually, we are going to stand for that. And we're also going to give her some lucrative jobs. While the blooming mayor of Shefford is reduced to writing to the local MP, begging her to keep a promise she made 70 days ago, and resign with immediate effect. It's 11:49. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. Unbelievable. We'll go a little further, actually. Look at this. This is June the 12th, 2023. When our former PM, Boris Johnson, told me I had been included in his resignation honours list, I was overwhelmed and immediately suffered another bout of imposter syndrome. So that was June the 12th, 2023, by which point she had failed to hold a surgery in her constituency for 3 years and 3 months. 3 years and 3 months. June the 12th, 2023. It was 11 months since she'd spoken in the House of Commons. and yet she felt she deserved a peerage. It's quite incredible, right? So we're talking about somebody being so obviously awful and so contemptuous both of constituents and parliamentary democracy, being rewarded by Rupert Murdoch, being rewarded by Paul Dacre and the Daily Mail and Viscount Rothermere, but also, of course, being rewarded by Boris Johnson. It's almost as if the people who are most necessary to their ludicrous mission are the worst of all politicians, almost, isn't it? And Martin Samuel rather beautifully puts it, fortunately, imposter syndrome appears to have a cure, because no sooner had this elevation been promised, it was taken away. Since when Dorries, far from feeling relieved at the spared embarrassment, has spent several months in an ear-splitting snit about the dark forces at work against her. Bogus victimhood. 11:51. Steve's in Crawley. Steve, what's going on?
Hello, James. I wish I knew what was going on.
So do I, Steve.
I know there's an organisation called IPSA, but it's obviously not fit for purpose. It's about
I think
time
Pete wrote to them. Sorry to jump straight in before you've even got into your stride, but I think Pete, the response Pete got from them, and he's an employment lawyer, was a reminder of what the parameters of what they can do. So it's not fair to say they're not fit for purpose, because I don't think this is their purpose, but it probably should be.
Absolutely. Well, then in that case, there needs to be another totally independent body, and I know this is a bit like politicians voting for Turkey's voting for Christmas.
Yes.
There needs to be an organisation that enforces, spots lies and gets them put right. In other words, it's against the law for public servants and anyone seeking public servant office to lie in public.
Yeah.
And they are taken independently to task on that. And there needs to be another independent body, maybe the same thing, that enforces standards, and are our politicians that we voted for and paying money for doing what we're paying them for.
Well, do you know what's very sad about your analysis? Accurate though it, in fact, the fact that it's accurate is part of the reason why it's sad, is that I think that they used to police this themselves. I think
policing yourself is an irrelevance, isn't it?
There's a reason why they call each other honourable. I mean, don't laugh your head off at this, but it used to be largely true. And there's a reason why there's a reason why parliamentary privilege exists, because it used to be an important protection. But what you've reminded me of is the fact that idea of a whip now, going to see her in, what would we say, December 2020, saying, look, it's just come to our attention that you haven't had a surgery in your constituency for 9 months. I'm just wondering what's going on and if there's anything we can help with. Or a whip coming up to her in December of last year and saying, you haven't said a word in the House of Commons for 6 months. And
yeah,
so that's gone, hasn't it? That notion of self-regulation, I think, has been completely destroyed. And that's why there's a space which you've just described, a need that you've just described.
I mean, in the past, I've been a reliable Conservative voter. I can't vote for them at the moment.
No.
I personally, for other reasons, can't vote Labour. I feel totally disenfranchised. I don't know who I can vote for, because I'm sure there are some honest politicians in there, but how the heck do me, as an ordinary person who doesn't have time to read every single newspaper, every decent newspaper, and find out the truth, if you can find out the truth, how do I know who to listen to? That's why we need someone independent that we can rely on.
Who could do that job, though? I mean, so I won't dig into your reasons for not being able to vote Labour, but is that not perhaps evidence of a climate in which nobody is ever going to be trusted? Because there should be circumstances in which you could contemplate voting for any party. Even I voted for Boris Johnson.
Yeah, there should be. That is exactly it. And I'm happy to be a floating voter. I will vote for the person that I feel can be trusted. But I don't know how I find that person. I really don't.
Well, that brings us back to the...
I've never not voted.
That brings us back to the media, doesn't
voted.
it? I think that brings us back to the media. It's strange...
Rabbit
and
my wife always tells me Brexit is my fault because I voted for it. I now passionately wish that I hadn't.
Sure.
But I was lied to.
You were.
I was totally lied to.
But I think you can point out to your wife that you weren't the only one.
Oh, no, in her mind it is just me.
That's a reflection on marriage, not politics, Steve. I think that's you silly man. and you started Brexit. It's got a touch of Faulty Towers to it, that, Steve. Take care. Wasn't it? Sheena points out. What was it Sunak said about a new government of accountability and all that? It's incredible, isn't it? It really is. Professionalism, accountability and integrity. Carl's in Prescott. Carl, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. How you doing?
I'm grand. How are you?
Not too bad, thank you. Is it not more a case that she hasn't quit yet? Because doesn't she employ 2 of the children?
I think just one of them these days. I could be wrong, but certainly back in the day there was a joint salary of about 80 grand. But yeah, all right. And actually, while we're doing the kind of checks and balances, I suppose March 2020. There would have been lockdown, so the absence of any constituency surgery should probably, I'm just reading what Martin Samuel wrote in the Times today, but if it was me, I probably might have picked a later date to be scrupulously fair. But if that is the reason, why did she announce her resignation with immediate effect?
She's thicker than a whale omelette.
I'm glad you said that and didn't reference Boxing Day. Thank you, Carl. Andros is in New Milton. Andros, what would you like to say?
Oh, James, first time I've ever spoken to you.
All right, can you be sure? How can you be sure of that? We might have spoken without noticing in the past. When
you never know. I'm next London. I'm out in New Milton now. So.
All right.
Yeah. Anyway, what I want to say, James, I know you're probably busy with these.
I'm busy presenting a phone-in show, so it's absolutely reasonable for you to talk to me having phoned in, Andros. Don't worry.
You know what I mean, mate? I'm sorry.
Carry on.
Right. I know you said you asked the questions and we have to answer, but
yeah.
I'm going to sort of say, I believe that Nadine Dorries has transcended to another form of stupidity. She's in her own stupidity. I know it sounds silly, but bear with me.
I will.
In her own stupidity, she has found the truth to basically everything, right?
Yeah.
Us being less, shall we say, less stupid than Nadine Dorries.
Yeah, one would hope so.
Cannot
certainly.
see it. We're almost blind. She has seen something that none of us can see.
Yes.
Because she is above us all, or should I say below us all, in stupidity. So therefore, she has seen something more. And the fact that Rishi Sunak doesn't withdraw the whip is because he's scared. She has got dirt on a few people.
I don't think I don't think she's got dirt on anyone. I genuinely don't. I don't say it like that. I don't know that it worked. No, you did it again. I literally just said don't do that, and you literally did it again. It made exactly the same noise. There was not even any pretense to observe my polite request. But I don't think so.
I'm sorry, James.
Not on Rishi Sunak, mate. It's not.
No,
not
you're
on
right.
little
I mean,
Rishi.
Yeah, that was tough. That was horrible.
But I like what you said. So we're close here, Andros. Because my theory is that she is too stupid to understand how stupid she is.
Yes, but my theory, I agree.
And you've taken that a little further. You've taken that almost into the realms of her inventing a new philosophy.
She has transcended.
She has transcended the normal parameters of stupidity.
Yes. Where normal rules do not apply. So therefore, she can promise she's going to resign and not resign because in her world, it doesn't matter. Normal rules do not apply, you see?
Yes.
You get that? Yeah, I know you would, James. You're brilliant.
Well, no, I'm only as good as what I have to work with, Andros.
I must read one of your books, by the way, while I'm still here.
You must what?
Read one of your books.
Yeah, well, that would be nice. Get the new one, November the 2nd, How They Broke Britain. It picks up on a heck of a lot of the themes that we've been discussing today because they are themes that we're going to be discussing forevermore. And now I've got a quote for the front of it, which is a wonderful little end-of-week bonus for me. It is coming up to 11:59 and mentioning the daughters, who, I mean, don't really deserve to be dragged into this, but if you put them on the payroll, then they get dragged into it. My first real encounter of this ridiculous woman was when she called me names based on the school I went to. She called me can you remember what she called me, Keith? Can you remember what she called me? A public school posh boy, and then another swear word like 30p Leenock language. And I must have told you this before. I got a message off an old school pal of mine, and he said she sends her daughters to the school we went to. So she's attacking me for going to a public school, private school. She's attacking me for going to a posh school. And it's exactly the same school that her own daughters went to. That's the point Andros is making. There's a level of stupidity that becomes impenetrable to sentient human beings. How stupid would you have to be to attack someone for going to a school that your own children went to? That I don't think we can get our heads around that level of stupidity. All right, it's 3 minutes after 12. I've got no idea what to do next. There's a story I would quite like to talk about, but I don't think I'm normally happy backing myself, right? I can normally, I mean, it has been suggested that in the context of a radio phone-in programme, I can get blood out of a stone. There's a story about a nudist beach in Spain, to which I am inexorably drawn like a moth to a flame. But I can't, I was about to say I can't see, well, I mean, you can see everything, but I can't see the question. It's a beautiful piece of writing. It was on a sun-kissed stretch of beach in Catalonia that Segimon Rovira began to feel self-conscious. For as long as the 56-year-old could remember, the area's turquoise waters had been primarily frequented by nudists. Now, he was painfully aware of being surrounded by sunbathers in their swimsuits. So the complaint here is that naturists are fighting back against people turning up on nudist beaches wearing clothes. And I'm drawn to that story for two reasons. Number one, I've never really moved very far away from my 11-year-old self. So just nudity and Englishness combined, don't they? Other cultures, other countries don't find nudity funny or prurient. It's post-Victorian. Post-Victorian sensibilities is what it is. And you know, I am what I am. I cannot lie. I find that kind of funny. And then the other thing is, I told you about that time in Crete a couple of years ago when I ended up on a nudist beach by accident and decided when in Rome, well, I'll let you imagine the rest if you can promise me not to get too excited. But I did discover that nudist beaches are perhaps unexpectedly for people unfamiliar with them, they are the least, what's the word I want, Keith? What's a nice word in this context? No, glamorous doesn't work. Can I say arousing? Sex? I mean, not. They are the least. When you're a kid, you probably think nudist beaches would be, I don't know, a place of enormous excitement. They are not. They are places of. I mean, actually, what I'm going to say is that nudist beaches could actually put you off sex for life. You'd think the prospect of some German fellas. Dangly bits, which you don't just have to confront. You walk up the beach, right? You walk up the sea line where the shore meets the beach, and everyone's sunbathing. So they're all lying down, and you glance to the left, and you're confronted. I don't know why I said German. I hope I'm not stereotyping, but on the nudist beach that I accidentally visited a few years ago, there was a distinct preponderance of Germans, and there are no angles. There are no angles from which an overweight German man looks good, naked. Even dressed, there aren't many angles from which an overweight German man looks good. But the awning over the toy shop would be unattractive enough at the best of times. But when the toy shop is uncovered, unbothered by clothing, no. So we can't talk. Why did you give me this? Why I can't talk about this? This is just how are we going to get a phone in out of this? I can't get a phone. What would even the question be? Should people in clothes be allowed on nudist beaches? I'm in London in 2023. Should people in clothes be allowed on nudist? All right, I'm going to do two topics this hour. That's question number one. Should people in clothes be allowed on nudist beaches? As a nudist of one occasion, no, I don't think they should. This isn't a phone-in, is it? There's no one's going to... Shall I just be quiet and see if the phone... Tantalising's good. Titillating. God, you're so good at this. You're much better than me. I've got a lovely selection of words coming in now. Evocative. No, Jason, evocative is not the word I'm looking for when I describe how unappetising, that's quite a good word, unappetising. They're the least titillating places you could possibly imagine. That's a beautiful bit of wordplay from Ian. Tantalising. Someone else has gone for evocative. I don't think it's evocative. Why are you saying evocative? I don't get the evocative bit. 7 minutes after 12 is the time. Should people in clothes be allowed on nudist beaches? Now, the problem with this as a topic is that if you're a nudist, right, and you think they shouldn't be, that seems to me to be a perfectly reasonable position. But if you're not a nudist and you think you should be allowed on it, that makes you sound like a bit of a pervert, doesn't it? So if you're interested in the mechanics of radio phone-ins, the reason why I don't think this works as a topic, but the phone lines are open, so you're welcome to disprove me. The reason why I don't think this works as a topic is that you have closed down a constituency of callers without realising it. So if you ring me now as a non-nudist and tell me that you should be allowed on a nudist beach, everyone's going to think you're a bit weird. Everyone is going to think that you are a bit of a voyeur, even with my warning ringing in your ears that there's absolutely nothing to voyeur about. So I don't think this... Well, anyway, it's 8 minutes after 12. No one's rung yet. 0345 6060 973. Nudism is not banned in Spain, said Rivera, who leads the Naturist Nudist Federation of Catalonia. But so as not to bother people, we prefer to go to beaches that have traditionally been nudist and where most people are naked. We want people to respect this. Seems reasonable. 9 minutes after 12 is the time. So I'll get that up and running. I think I've got one call. Can't believe it. But the other story I thought we'd talk about this hour, and I'm doing both. I'm riding two horses like a rodeo cowboy, okay? The other one I'm going to do this hour is actually quite interesting, but I wasn't sure that it had enough for an hour. So we'll do the nudists on the side. The Prince of Wales is facing criticism. How many people think of Charles when I say the Prince of Wales? Do you still think of Charles when I say the Prince of Wales, or do you think of William now? Because it is, of course, William. The Prince of Wales is facing criticism after it was confirmed that he will not attend the Women's World Cup final in Sydney on Sunday. It's desperately exciting, this. And Prince William is the president of the Football Association. He's tweeted a personal message of congratulations. Oh, well done him. I bet he had to have a lie down after that. Tweeted a personal message of congratulations to the Lionesses after their victory over Australia. Kensington Palace say he will not fly to Australia to cheer the team on in the final. We'll be watching it on television. Now, I heard talk of climate change and carbon footprints previously, but that is not what they've said. It is understood that the decision was made because it would involve flying. That it would involve flying across the world for a very short period of time, and indeed that taking such a long flight would involve creating a large carbon footprint, which goes against William's commitment to tackling climate change. I like this. So I love this, actually. The more I think about it, it's like the opposite of the nudists. Oh, we've got a call. Should we take the call on the nudists first and then crack on? Crack on. No? Oh, honestly. And then continue with the conversation about Prince. Let's do that. Stephen's in Al Khadiza. Stephen, what can you tell me?
Morning, James.
Morning,
Hope you're well.
Are you fully clothed?
Actually, pretty much.
Good.
But it is 36 degrees. So,
holy moly.
Yeah. I'm keeping it all in. Every single beach in Spain is nudist. There's no such thing as a nudist and non-nudist beach. You can go nude wherever you like.
Yes, you're absolutely right. It is not banned in Spain, is the point, isn't it? So it's not So nudism is not banned. You can, as Segimon Rivera said, you can do it on any beach.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you were right in saying that for the first 5 seconds, you're like, oh my God, you can see her boobs. But then it's just a lot of boobs, and some of them, in fact, most of them tend to be nearer the ground than where they first started.
And German scrotums.
Many, many, many scrotums indeed. In fact, funnily enough, I was in Germany 2 weeks ago in Baden-Baden and went to one of the baths there. And was just Baden-Baden. Baden with your Baden. And scrotums Baden, many scrotums in Baden.
Scrotums to the left of me, scrotums to the right of me. Maybe, I don't know if perhaps the plural is scroti. I'm not sure.
Scrotai.
Scrotai.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I've been to Spain, not for a while. Presumably, as with the one I fell onto in Crete, that it's known that there are parts of a beach. In fact, even in Norfolk, in Holcombe, there's a bit that is not reserved, isn't quite the right word, but everybody knows that it is that's the bit where the nudists go.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the beach now.
Yeah,
and if you went all the way to the left by the cove, that is the nudist area for the nudity. But if you want to wander down and get yourself an ice cream with everything hanging about, you're more than welcome to do so.
Oh gosh, God, that is different from here. But the complaint. And where would you keep your money?
Well, just maybe your own personal natural pocket, I suppose.
You could wear a bum bag, I suppose. But what?
Yeah.
What? I mean, were you aware of this story before you heard me talking gibberish this morning?
My wife's Spanish, so I've been coming here for a long time.
But were you aware of the complaints from the sort of hardcore nudists that too many people are straying into their parts of the beaches with their kit on?
No,
that's the story.
That was the first I'd heard was you saying it today. However, there have been issues in Mallorca with people putting up fake signs to get rid of British tourists.
I saw that.
Which I thought was, I thought that was quite funny.
I thought my favourite was the one that said the walk to the beach is 3 hours, and it's 100 metres away. But you just imagine yourself in your flip-flops, arriving at that sign and think, I'm not walking for 3 hours to get to a beach.
Especially with your bags and your chairs and your umbrella and the children.
So really, come on, you've given us some helpful wordplay and some nice badinage, but you've got nothing of substance to add to the conversation about...
I'm absolutely naked as the day I was born.
You've got nothing.
I'm terribly sorry.
No, muchas gracias. Mind how you go, Stephen. And just, look out for... No, I've done enough scrotum-related material, I think, for one programme. I've got another phone on nudist. I don't believe it. I was just getting my flipping hopes up for the Prince William conversation. I'm being bombarded by nudists. Oh, dear. Oliver's in Southampton. Oliver, what made you pick up the phone?
Oh, I'm not a nudist, James, but I just thought I'd say recently walking the South West Coast path from Swanage to Poole, and you have to walk along the nudist beach in Studland.
Yes.
So just thinking about some of the practicalities. If people are finishing that, have to strip off to finish.
I think you're being unduly pedantic on this one. I mean, you're talking about a thoroughfare rather than a destination, so you couldn't be realistically expected to get. And also, it's not the nudists of. Where were you again?
Studland Beach.
Studland Beach.
National Trust property.
You need a bit of confidence to get
a nudist beach.
You'd need a bit of confidence to get your kit off on Studland Beach, wouldn't you? But
exactly. You wouldn't want it to be a cold northerly breeze.
Precisely. You could get done for trades descriptions.
I do have a question though. There did appear to be a nudist piece of uniform though. They all appear to be wearing head protection of some form.
As in sun visors.
Yeah.
Well, you would as well. You wouldn't want to, your face is you wouldn't get a burnt nose. But the point is that you are describing a thoroughfare, and it's not the nudists of Studland who are up in arms about fully clothed people encroaching upon their space.
They do seem to keep themselves in the sand dunes.
Yes. Yes, that's a tradition, I think, that dates back centuries. Thank you, Oliver. 12:15. So now I haven't got any room on my switchboard for phone-ins about whether Prince William should go to... Because if you're a big environmentalist, I wonder how you feel about this. Is it good? Is it really good that Prince William is apparently not going to the World Cup final on account of the carbon footprint that it would create? Or... do you think that this... I mean, this is an interesting question because, we most of us justify air travel by saying, well, we don't do it very often and we only do it on a special occasion. So is Prince William prioritising his holidays over his duties as president of the Football Association? I don't know. It's 12:16. 12:18 is the time. This is good. I think this is from Monty. I used to work on a nudist beach, James, and my job was to ask the textiles, which is the name... given to people wearing clothes, to either leave the beach or take their clothes off. That looks like France, is it? The Mairie d'Acte? I don't know, but I have lots of stories, he adds. Lots of stories, twice. Also, I had a great all-over tan. So you live and learn. This is from one of the country's leading broadcasters. I don't know. I don't think there'd be a problem if I were to disclose the identity of my correspondent, but it might be more fun not to, so I can leave you wondering. It also deploys a quite beautiful turn of phrase that I hadn't previously encountered. There's a geographical clue, perhaps, in the contribution I'm about to read out. But this is from a household name UK broadcaster. I once did a live TV outside broadcast from a nude art installation that stretched across the Gateshead Millennium Bridge. The cameraman really did incredible work framing out the devil's bagpipes of the gentleman behind me, who was sat on a problematically high bar stool as I interviewed participants. Beautiful language, that. Absolute poetry. Yvonne's in Perthshire. Yvonne, I'm trying to have a phone in about Prince William, but I keep getting bombarded with nudist-related content.
Hi.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Hey, hi James, long-time listener, first-time caller ever.
Welcome aboard. Well, gosh, crikey, tempted you out of your purdah.
Well, just a little funny story for Friday. So I work for a German company, multinational, and we quite occasionally have meetings in a lovely spa hotel in Germany, in the Rhine Valley.
Very nice.
Anyway, the European team were there.
Is it near Baden-Baden?
No, I won't mention the name. Just in
better
case.
not. Yes, just as well.
Yeah, but beautiful hotel. Anyway, it was a really nice thing to do, and colleagues from around Europe. But what we didn't realise was the indoor and outdoor hotels. So you go in and out under the little bit when you're swimming. But there was also another swimming pool outside side,
Yeah.
and it was the nudist area for the people that went there for their spa bit or for the health club.
Right.
But the funny thing was that the new bit of the hotel, the hotel rooms overlooked the nudist bit.
Oh.
And we didn't realise that. Luckily, mine didn't. And you were talking about older Germans. Gentlemen.
Yeah,
and
I just want to be clear that I mean other nationalities would be equally, but it just seems to be a German.
And myself, being a lady of a certain age, not the sleekest now, and but it was hilarious over dinner because our colleagues were recounting, and there was a Greek, a Spanish, a French, and we were just in fits of laughter because they said you couldn't turn away from the window. It's just like mesmerising you were watching.
Oh, yes, but it is not what you if you've never encountered it before. It's nothing like what you expect. Even if you wouldn't have given much thought about what to expect, but it's nothing like what you might have expected, is it? It's a very. I get it, by the way. I mean, I'm less giggly. I can see why you're giggly, but I went all in. You see, I'm partly because the family were there and they think I'm quite prudish and they weren't expecting it to happen, and then suddenly I'm running down the beach.
Yeah,
like the day I was born, and once you get in the water, I understand the appeal. I do understand the sort of vitamin D reaching parts that it's never normally reached before, and in the sea and all of that. But I don't know, the tension between the textiles and the nudists it's a new one on me. I bet when you woke up this morning, you didn't think you were going to ring a radio station for the very first time to talk about naked.
But the interesting thing was your researcher was asking, so you don't think it's just the British that are very prudish?
Yeah.
No, I think it's whether you've come across it. And our young Greek colleague and Spanish colleague, and they were just like, oh my God.
Yeah. Well, age maybe, I don't know. I'm going to say naturist, not nudist. I'm getting a bit of gentle criticism from actual naturists who really object to the word nudist, and that actually I do understand. Words are very important, and nudist does convey that sort of sniggery sense, whereas naturist is much. It's a much less loaded word. You are communing with nature. This is your completely natural condition. 23 minutes after 12 is the time. Can we get at least one phone? Can I please have one phone call? Because I do think the more I think about it, my gut reaction to this story is it's absolutely outrageous that nobody from the royal family. What's the point of having a royal family if you get to a World Cup final and none of them are there? But if Prince William is bone idle, as some of you are suggesting, this is the most wonderful get out of jail free card, isn't it? He's bone idle. He probably doesn't even like football. He's like David Cameron pretending. He has to pretend that he likes football. I don't want to go to Australia. It's 24 hours on a plane. Well, I've seen all the good films. I'm the king's son. So he's not going. So I don't want to go. So I'll say I can't go to the. I'm very sorry. I am president of the Football Association, but I can't go to the World Cup final, even though England are in it, because of the carbon footprint. And no one can really argue with him about that. But I think it's dodgy that none of them are going to be there. 0345 6060 973. Mags is in Bow. Mags, what would you like to say?
First of all, I don't care about whether it goes or not because I don't really care about the royal family. But
you can't ring your phone in to tell the presenter that you don't care about the subject that he's doing.
Well, no, I rang in about stripping off on a beach by mistake.
Oh, well, so you care about that then? You care about that then?
I did. I had a lovely time. A bit like yourself, on a beach in Lanzarote with 4 friends.
Yes.
None of us had ever taken anything. Well, we all wore the costumes, the usual things.
Yes, of
Nobody
course.
on the beach.
Yes.
The 4 of us.
Yes.
We've got lots of lather. We've got lots of stuff on because we're all Irish and very Catholic and covered up.
You got to be careful.
Loads of. Yeah, you have. Well, Catholics. Well, I'm not even going to go there. No. Loads of Germans arrived. I only knew that because they'd got a lot of equipment with them. They've got blow up sunbeds, blow up everything.
Yeah.
And they arrived up the beach, and I said, oh, look at this Betty. There's loads. Good God, they've got no clothes on. I start off, I was embarrassed, kept my eyes closed, thought we won't look.
Yes.
Michelle said, don't look, don't tell the others because they were asleep. And I said, I feel embarrassed now. I've got my clothes on. I mean, obviously, all my life it's been Adam and Eve. You know, you cover up, you don't show your bits, all of that. The next thing, I stripped off. The other girls were stripped off. I say girls, women. And then we took off down the beach, and it was the most fantastic thing. We were in the sea, jumping over waves. It was so liberating. It really freeing.
Oh.
And you have done it, you know. But
I do.
There was, I looked at they were mainly Germans. I don't want to have a go at them. I'm not mad on Germans, to be honest. But that's not fair because I'm sure there are some lovely ones.
What?
However,
it's taken a turn.
It has taken it. No, I do try because I was brought up on a lot of war films, so you've got to go. I'm trying very much to be.
Yeah, but that's
nice
the
to
Nazis. You said I
Germans.
don't like the Nazis.
I'm not keen on them. I know. But
You're
I'm
not
trying to be
keen on
nice to
You're not keen on
Americans as well.
Nazis, Mags.
I'm trying to be nice to Americans.
Yeah, but you
as
can
well.
be.
That's
No,
fine.
you can say I don't like Nazis. You don't say I don't like Germans.
I know, but they all sound like they're going to shout at me, get off the train.
All
do
right,
you know
let's
what I
go
mean?
back to the
Anyway,
nudism. It's actually less controversial territory.
You brought the German. Well, you
No.
said the Germans, and then they were German.
No, I didn't. You invaded Poland. It's a joke. All right. Carry on.
Cheerio, Dale. Well, it was just one. I honestly can say to you, you have done it. But for all the people who haven't done it, I'd say give it a go. It's liberating.
Would you have felt
Yeah.
aggrieved if I mean if there were people there in clothes with their costumes on? Would that? No, it's funny that.
Live and let live. But then I'm not really normally a nudist or a naturist or whatever. I'm normally quite
Naturist.
prudish.
No.
Yeah, whatever. I'd say I was quite prudish until then, but now.
But you didn't become you didn't discover the liberating joy wasn't such that you've now become a habitual naturist.
I don't know if there's any naturist in Bow, but I would strip off. It's also not warm enough here, is it? Really, we'd be perished. Do you know what I mean?
This is very true. Very true.
But I'd do it on a holiday. Did you do it on holiday this time? Did you?
No, they didn't find any nudist beaches this time. I'm not pretending I looked particularly hard, Mags, but if I had stumbled onto one, I probably would have embraced the moment in my.
We should do it again. Absolutely wonderful. I would definitely do it
Well,
again.
there you go.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't actually launch a phone in saying, have you ever done it and did you enjoy it? We were looking more at the tension between the textiles and the naturists. But I'm delighted to have been treated to that chapter from your memoir, Mags. 27 minutes after 12, and the word I would use is liberating. But that's not what the phone in is about. Can we get a Prince William? Can we get a Prince William call on soon? Do you think? I mean, now I sound ungrateful because now Diane in Tottenham's on the line and she wants to talk about nudists, but I've just made it clear that I'd rather be talking. So, naturists. Why have you written nudists on the screen? I'm trying to say naturists. Hello, Diane. What would you like to say?
Oh, well, you've covered my first point, which was they are naturists, not nudists.
I know.
And also...
They or we?
They,
all right.
Not me. I call it naturist.
Yeah, just clarify.
Because...
Yes.
And very good Basil Fawlty impression too, James.
Thank you very much.
I wanted to talk about having chosen to go to a naturist beach in Spain with my daughter and my two friends. How we went down. She's 15.
Okay.
She was 15, and we went down. It's a lovely beach. And after about 10 minutes, someone from the Catalonian naturist beach society, the person who rang you earlier, or one of their organisation, came up to us and asked us to leave because my daughter wanted to keep her bottoms on. She was naked.
When was this?
It was some time ago.
Oh, so it's been around a while. The Naturist Nudist Federation of Catalonia.
Absolutely. They were marshals. They even had a little badge on, actually.
Well, that's the job that Monty
marshal.
used to do. That's the job that Monty used to do. He'd had to go up to people and ask, well, I never...
And we were shocked and said, look, she's 15, you know.
Yeah. And we're all naked. We're all naked.
And she, believe me, it took some persuasion to get her to do that. Really. But anyway,
of course it did. I mean, to be fair, as a 15, I mean, I can't think of fewer things I'd want to do with my mum at the age of 15 than visit a naturist beach, Diane, but horses for courses.
Well, my daughter would probably agree with you. But,
she probably would. And you got her in trouble with the Naturist Nudist Federation of Catalonia. What sort of holiday is this, Mum? This is awful.
Oh, we've been on lots of very odd holidays. But anyway, so we were very... and my friends speak Catalan even, not just Spanish, because they've lived there for so long.
Yes.
But so there was no misunderstanding. And anyway, so we put our clothes on, got in the car, I went 2 miles down the road to a gay naturist beach where we were welcomed with open arms. Not too open for Rachel, indeed. But,
okay, so they didn't have the problem there on the...
They didn't have the problem at all. And the reason we hadn't gone there before is because it was predominantly male. It was a gay male beach. There were, I don't think there were any other women on. But they were quite happy to accept me and my daughter as women. and young women. And but the naturist beach, or the beach where people gathered, were really, how odd. I mean, it's usually I can absolutely understand.
The other way around.
Yeah, but I can absolutely understand that people don't, because there's a whole problem of pervs. People going there.
Well, there is, but I, as I said at the outset, it's pretty slim picking for pervs, I suspect. If that is your motivation for turning up there, for the reasons that we have examined. Before you go, Diane, what do you think about Prince William going to the World Cup final?
Well, as a die-hard Tottenham fan, of course, toys and all that, I think it's perfectly reasonable for him to stay here and not use all those air miles, because it's a no-win situation for him, isn't it? He goes.
All right, then. What if it was the men? England football World Cup final.
That was going to be my second point, and that I bet he would have gone if it was.
Well, there you go, then. So you're endorsing his casual sexism, you see?
The FA's casual sexism, not necessarily his.
If he wanted to go, he's the flipping Prince of Wales. If he wanted to go, he could go. And also, I don't think he'd struggle to get a ticket either. Diane, thank you. It's 12:31. Amelia Cox has your headlines. 12:34 is the time, 12:35 even. England reach a World Cup final in a country where the King is the head of state, points out Stephen in Sheffield. William should be there. Surely the question would be, to ask, is whether he would fly to Australia if it was the Men's World Cup final. Well, I have already asked that question, actually, but I can. But no reason why you should have noticed. Why doesn't Prince William get on a commercial flight? I presume that was the point anyway. Oh, you think that the carbon footprint argument gets undermined slightly by the fact there's a plane flying anyway and he could just get a seat on it? I'm inclined to agree. It's flying anyway, says Hannah, and there's no additional carbon footprint. I'm pretty sure he can afford first class. If it was the men, he'd be there. James, you haven't mentioned that the Queen of Spain will be at the final. Well, Bark from Berkshire. The reason for that is that I like to leave some opportunities for you to get on the show, Did you know the Queen of Spain is going to be at the final? Is it Letizia, I think, Queen Letizia, which kind of takes us back to the other topic that we're discussing this hour. 12:36 is the time. If Prince William has chosen not to go, how about our Prime Minister? Asked Lucy and Bushy, which also takes us back to the other conversation that we're having this hour. And finally, if it were the men's, he would have been at the whole tournament. Jill's in Dover. Jill, what do you reckon?
Oh, hi, James.
Hello, Jill.
This is the very first time I've ever done this, and I'm a bad nerd.
What are you doing?
Phoning you.
I see. Really. Goodness me. I thought you might have been taking us back to the naturist conversation then.
Well, I could do, but anyway.
Carry on.
With William, yes. He absolutely should be there.
You're
absolutely, right. No question.
Yes.
This is huge.
Yes.
I mean, the Australians were talking about a bank holiday if their girls had done it. And the fact that it's a World Cup, the fact that it's women as well, I think it's monumental. Of course he should be there.
He's their head of state as well. I mean, it's in his dad is head of state in Australia as well, isn't he?
Yeah. And commercial flight, first class, he could tuck Rishi in his suitcase perhaps, and and they could make it. They could care about it, couldn't they? They could show that they care. It's so important. I can't believe they're even thinking of missing it, really.
I'm actually going to agree with you. I mean, it's not going to keep me awake at night, but I have, if all the things that have happened in sport while I have been a father of daughters, which just means I notice things differently. I'm not suggesting it gives me any special insights, but the very organic way in which women's sport and women in sport have just become part of the furniture. When I've been in this job, when men would ring in to scream about women lines judges, having a woman running the line in a Premiership match, it'd be people getting cross about that. It's been beautiful to witness both the rise of sport and the rise of female presenters in sport, in men's sport. And yet this is a retrograde step. This is, I think, saying, it's different because it's women. Because there's no way that he wouldn't be there if it was the men's team. There just isn't, is there? There's no way it just wouldn't happen. He wouldn't be talking about carbon footprints or any climate change or the rest of it.
It just sounds like a big fat excuse.
I think you're right. What do you reckon? Do you think he's just lazy?
Possibly.
Oh, no, because I get like that at weekends sometimes.
Perhaps he's just got something that he thinks is better to do, but I can't think of very much that would be, honestly. No? I mean, I am a lifelong, and I'm pretty old now, football hater. I absolutely loathe it. But I've really got behind this team, and I think so many other people have.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm even going over to my daughter's, and we're all going to watch it together on Sunday.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, I love the fact they're so skillful. I was really surprised. As the first time I saw it, I thought, they're just going to be dribbling the ball into the net, but they're brilliant. They are so good.
It's sensational stuff, and you're right. I mean, it is impossible to avoid the suspicion, let's say, just to be generous, that it would be a very different for the men. Now, Jill, how was that, considering that you were a bag of nerves just 4 short minutes ago?
Not too bad, actually. Right. I think the weight was the hardest bit, to be honest. Do you want to hear my little thing about a nudist beach or not?
Go on then.
Right. So this is well over 40 years ago, and yes. I don't know. Am I allowed to say where it was?
Of course you are. Well, what could possibly?
Right.
Why wouldn't you be? What could possibly happen?
So anyway, it was Fairlight Cove, which is just outside Hastings.
Oh yes.
Really lovely, an incredibly difficult beach to find for obvious reasons, I suppose.
Yes.
You had to walk for miles, and it wasn't signposted again, obviously.
Right,
down a really steep cliff path. I mean, really difficult. Anyway, so we got there, and I was with my husband as well, and. Very, very swiftly, it became obvious that, in fact, it was a cruisers' beach.
Okay.
And I was
what,
the only
swingers?
woman. No, cruisers.
What's the difference between a cruiser and a swinger?
Well, I think the thing is the cruisers were swinging, actually. But anyway,
right. I'm all confused now. I'm feeling very.
Right, well, I will explain.
Thank you. Go on.
So I was the only woman there.
Oh, I see. Yes.
Right. So the people that were there was one guy that was perched on a rock like a statue.
Yes.
Obviously, on display.
Yes.
There was another one who was really skinny and really white. And he was totally naked apart from black shoes and a black briefcase. And he strolled up and down the beach. It was so weird. And then there was a chap who was lying sort of adjacent to me, but in front of me, a bit further.
Yeah.
Anyway, he was probably in his 50s.
Right.
And when he wanted to get up and go, he ever so carefully snuck his trousers up over his feet and then wriggled into them and then stood up and bent over right in front of me. And if you can imagine, you were talking about scrotums, weren't you? But
Well,
it was
yes,
awful.
when you put it like that, it sounds a bit...
from the beach.
Oh, no, really?
Oh, really? It was...
Well, you haven't forgotten that, have you?
Oh, I've never forgotten that. It's imprinted on my brain. But the swimming in the sea was amazing.
Yes.
Absolutely amazing. Definitely recommend that.
Well, I tell you what, considering how nervous you were before you came on the show, you've hit your stride pretty quickly, Jill.
Well, it's just something, as I say, it was over 40 years ago, and you don't forget things. I can still see that guy bent over in front of me because the sight was absolutely horrendous.
Thank you, Jill. Have fun on Sunday. It's 12:42. Katie's in Tunbridge. Katie, football or the other one?
Football, please.
Oh, thank goodness for that. Carry on.
Right, I've just picked up my daughter from tutor who plays football.
Yes.
And I was listening to the radio station as I do, and I said to her, "What's your opinion on this, Francesca?" And she's sitting next to me now. And she made a really valid point that Prince William actually did attend the boys' or the men's football in Qatar, where the stadium was built under slave labour. And she's really, really upset that he is not going. And we were actually planning to go. If she wasn't doing the 11 plus, we would have got on a plane on Saturday morning and we would have flown over and we would have watched the girls.
Oh, wow.
And then flown back. And we really wanted to, but we had to weigh up, whether it was going to be, whether we'd get a delay and things like that. But she's really quite cross, and I think her point is amazing for a 10-year-old to put that across.
I think you're right. Well done, Francesca. Beautiful
Well
work.
done.
Beautiful work.
Yeah, she's sitting next to me.
Well done, Francesca. As I say it again, I don't know why I'm saying it again. She can hear it. Your mum's passed it on. And what she's really nailed down is the fact that if it were the men's team, we wouldn't be having this conversation, would we?
We definitely wouldn't. And it's, it's so sad. I think he should change his mind and get on a plane
Okay, well, it's not too late. He could still do it.
It's definitely not too late.
And would you wish Francesca the very best of luck from all of us for her 11 plus as well, Kate?
I will. Thank you so much. Thank you very much for taking our call.
Thank you very much. I think that with that sort of incisive mind, she will probably be okay, but nothing, as we discovered yesterday, is nothing is guaranteed. It's 12:43. Fanny's in Cheltenham. Which subject is it, Fanny, that you'd like to contribute to?
Well, I have to confess, I'm still having a bit of a giggle about the cruisers swinging.
Yes, I did. I should have known the difference between a cruiser and a swinger, actually, but I do now.
I didn't know the difference, but it was just the fact when we combined the two, I thought that was rather good.
Yes, it's important not to get them mixed up, I would suggest.
But I was actually calling about William because when I called, nobody called, and you sounded so sad that nobody called. I thought I'd better pitch in.
I was worried. I thought I was going to be talking about naturism for the whole hour.
I could tell.
Yeah.
I could tell.
But then again, it's gone quite well, so, it's all happening. All human life is here, Fanny.
Yeah, and while I've been sitting here,
yes,
I've had time to ruminate.
Oh, good. What conclusions have you arrived at?
Well, first of all, I thought, he's damned if he does and he's damned if he doesn't.
Yes, that's fair.
Right. And then I thought, well, actually, hang on a minute. What would happen if we win, when we win?
Yeah.
And he's not there.
Yeah.
What's that going to look like? And then I dug a little bit deeper and went, well, hang on a minute. How long's this been in the diary? How long has this match been booked for? So I went online and did a bit of Googling, as I do.
Yeah.
And had a look at his diary.
Right.
And there are no official engagements for him until the 18th of September.
Who does he think he is, Nadine Dorries?
I mean, seriously, right?
Unbelievable.
So I'm thinking, what was so that it must have been discussed. The PR team must have gone, well, we've got the ladies' final, football final coming up in. Are we going up with a window? I mean, what were their minds doing?
I don't know.
I think he needs to change his mind.
Well, I don't think he can now, because it would then look like he was doing it just because you said that he should.
Who cares?
It would be, every time he's got a decision to make, it gets thrown open to a sort of plebiscite or a referendum or something like that.
Are you calling me a plebiscite?
No, I'm not. I'm calling you a referendum. But but surely, you're right. It's Kensington Palace said he wouldn't fly to Australia. The conversation would have been a strange one, because I don't think he would have got a kicking for the environmental reasons. You possibly would have had a couple of people quite rightly taking advantage of the opportunity to point at the carbon footprint, but I don't think it would have touched the sides of public opinion.
But I also don't think that I think he cares about this. I don't think he's just not going because he's got a family barbecue.
Okay. No, well, I'm glad you're here to put that point forward, that it could be a genuine, it's such a short trip that I really can't justify that level of carbon footprint.
But like other people have said, there are planes going anyway. If he could have got one, he could have hopped on
and
one
like
of those.
Francesca said as well, he went to Qatar for the boys' game. So always, I mean, there is an element of damned if he does, damned if he doesn't. You're absolutely right. But on the balance of probabilities, I think it's a bit of a misstep not to be doing it, especially, as Fanny says, if we win. Because if we win and he's not there. Then again, normally you criticise him for bandwagoning, don't you? Normally you'd be like, what's he doing there? How do you get a ticket for this? Well, it's just try glory hunters. But a World Cup final is, well, for me, it's a once-in-a-lifetime experience, actually, so far. 10 minutes to 1 is the time. I don't think I was quite right at the top of this hour. I don't think that we should have seen the should Prince William go to Australia for the World Cup final story as a bit of a sort of light-hearted Friday fun, which is very much how I had it filed in my mind. I think the more we talk about it, perhaps the more serious it becomes, and it's disrespectful to the team. And I think the disrespect is informed by the fact that it's a women's team, which means it's disrespectful to women in general. I think Fanny's point about it being a sincere belief of his is obviously needs to be included. He genuinely feels, and don't forget that the Earthshot Prize is very much a labour of love for Prince William, seeking solutions to repair and regenerate the Earth. But he has a tension then between two passions. And which one should he have prioritised is the question. And I think, particularly if we win, it's going to be very hard. But then you want people to take the path of most resistance sometimes. If it's a point of principle, it's supposed to hurt. What I would do if I was advising him is tell him to go a bit further and say, listen, don't be daft. I'd love to be there. And I fully understand why so many people think I should be. But I intend to spend the rest of my life campaigning on the climate change issue. And it's difficult enough as it is with all these idiots running around the place claiming that there's no such thing. And therefore, I simply can't do it. I just couldn't live with myself. It's between me and my conscience, this. And then you say, there was a 10-year-old on James O'Brien show on LBC who pointed out that you went to Qatar. And you go, yeah. Pesky Francesca with her clever contributions. I don't know what to make about this. So I don't know. Maybe a bit more detail, or rather a bit more explanation, would lead him into even more trouble. Take the whole family. 0345 60973 is the number that you need. Joyce is in Weybridge. Joyce, what would you like to say? Joyce? Honestly, just can't get the callers. Are you there, Joyce?
Thanks for it.
What are you doing?
Well, I think it's a known...
Oh, it's your phone lines. No,
yeah,
I know you are, but you've got the radio on in the background, Joyce, which is there's a reason why we tell everyone to turn it off. Kevin's in Haywood. Kevin, what would you like to say?
Hello, James.
Hello.
I think we spoke before. I think we talked about Nadine Dorris when she was going on about...
You think we spoke before?
Yeah, well, we have spoken
before.
You
came on the most popular radio show, the most popular talk show in the history of commercial radio, and you forgot.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't forget that.
Right.
When we were talking about Doris, I definitely want to talk about her being on a nudist beach either. So.
No, stop. Whoa, stop it. Carry on. What did you ring in to talk about?
I think Prince William's excuse it's not sitting right with me at all, especially if he's in environmental work. He would have had a sustainability plan where all his emissions are mapped out, and part of that would be travel or business travel as well. So that's scope 1, 2, and 3 carbon emissions. So within that plan, there would have been a bit of leverage to do something like this.
You'd think so, wouldn't you?
Think so. 100%. And what he could have done, actually, said, look, I am going to attend this, but what I'm going to do, I'm going to responsibly offset the carbon emissions.
Okay, and that would kill two birds with one stone. I just need to clarify. I can't throw a 10-year-old under a bus, can I? But I don't think he did go to Qatar. We should probably have checked that before we started jumping up and down with that. So poor old Prince William, he just can't catch a break. But I don't think he did go to Qatar for the World Cup, although he did at some point say he might do if we do very, very well. So the point kind of stands, but not quite as powerfully as it did. It's too big a... you can't... If the England men's team got to the World Cup final and the president of the FA didn't turn up, I'd be surprised.
Yeah, 100%. No, I think there's something more behind it, to be frank. And I don't think it's just... I think the reason why he doesn't want to go is, I think for me, it sounds like he's using the environmental impact as an excuse.
Well, I'm going to stick up for him here. Because he does, he hasn't just paid lip service to this. I think that he wants this to be his legacy. And remember who his dad is. His dad was wanging on about the climate long before it was cool.
Yeah, but I think, he could have went and then responsibly offset that emissions. And if you said that I am going, what I am doing is doing X, Y, Z with the UN, offsetting or whatever that may be.
And then that gives people a little bit of advice perhaps on how they can do stuff as well. Just to clarify exactly, last October it was reported that he did not plan on attending the Men's World Cup in Qatar. It was understood, however, his office might have made arrangements so he could if Gareth Southgate's team reached the final. The England men's team then lost 2-1 to France in the quarters. 12:55 is the time. Roger's in Shoreham. Roger, what do you think?
Hello, James.
Hello, Roger.
Just wanted to make a quick point that if he wasn't the Prince of Wales, he could have just booked an ordinary airline seat, surely. And I hope nobody's made this point while I've been waiting on the phone.
So do I.
But for some time now, they could have just booked a seat on an ordinary plane, first class, whatever.
Well, that's right. Yes, I think you're absolutely right. I do. I just and there it is. I don't think anyone's suggesting. Can you get a private jet to go that far? No, I don't ask stupid questions about aeroplanes with 2 minutes to go. Roger, I've got to crack on only because I've forgotten to plug this week's Full Disclosure, which is a really joyful one with a journalist I can't believe it took me so long to meet. The sort of doyen of commentators, as far as I'm concerned. I speak of Polly Toynbee, the author and columnist and journalist. And she's written a wonderful book about this thing people do, and I get a bit of it, although I'm not on her level. The idea that if you've done all right in life, you're not allowed to be in favour of politics designed to redistribute wealth or improve equality, because if you haven't given away everything and dressed yourself in sackcloth and ashes, you must be a hypocrite. It's a beautiful book, actually, and it's a really special interview. Here's a little taster. When were you conscious of being too posh?
As a young child, I was playing with children in the council house. Maureen, down the other end of the village in this little tiny hamlet called Lindsay in Suffolk. And I was playing with her because I was, staying with my father. I hadn't got my friends to play with, made friends with her. And we were riding up and down on an orange box on wheels outside her house, taking it in turns to be the horse and to be the rider. And she was being the horse, and I was waving the stick in the air and shouting, go on, giddy up. And her mother came out and shouted at me, get out of that. How dare you treat my daughter like that? I'm not having her pushing you, Miss Lardy-Darring. Yeah. And I expected Maureen to say, but we were taking it in turns, but she was scared of her mum, and she went indoors, and her mum said, don't you ever come back here again. And I just knew at once that I was posh and she wasn't, although the cottage actually didn't even have electricity. It wasn't a posh cottage, but nevertheless I knew what she meant. Intuitively? Yes. Yeah. We know these things. Age 7, you know those things.
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, if you go to a primary school and talk to kids age 7, well, you wouldn't want to do this because it would be upsetting. But if they would know about the rankings of the kids instinctively, without anybody discussing it. They'd know levels of functionality. They'd know who was dysfunctional at home as well. They'd know who never had a lunchbox, who never had the right PE kit, whose mother arrived in a dressing gown. I mean, they just know stuff like that, and they know the kids who are got everything. Yeah. And did you just absorb this then, growing up? No one ever sat you down and gave you a chapter and verse on hierarchies and resistance? No, I don't think I was in that sense indoctrinated, but if your parents are very talkative and they're talking amongst themselves but also to you all the time about everything in life and society, you get the idea of class quite quickly. It comes in. If you're on the left, you think about it. And when does the emotional reaction kick in? When are you thinking, up with this, I shall not put? Well, in that incident, with Maureen, I suppose, you think straight away, this is painful. Why am I not the same as her and she not the same as me? Yeah. And you don't necessarily rationalise it very closely, but you know it's something. Also, we had an Italian sort of nanny, but sort of live-in part of housekeeper help for four kids, and there was an upstairs-downstairs life. You'd be talking to her and her friends. It came from working-class Italian background, and it would be very different from the conversation upstairs, often quite rude. And you wouldn't repeat things either way, what you heard upstairs or what you heard downstairs. You knew the difference. And even though, you loved her, she was called Aurelia, we absolutely loved her, we also know she wasn't us and we weren't her.
Lovely stuff there from Polly Toynbee, whose new book, An Uneasy Inheritance, is utterly delightful. It really is. And you know how much we obsess about class and social mobility on this programme. If you enjoy those subjects even a fraction as much as I do, then you will find that book right up your Strasse. If you missed any of today's show, it was a bit of an odd one, wasn't it? You can listen back on Catch Up on Global Player, where you can also rewind live radio. And I think there'll be a few occasions where you might use rewind live radio to check if I actually did say out loud what you thought I might have just said out loud. All the shows are there, all the podcasts, including Full Disclosure. Download it for free from Global Player or your app store, or indeed globalplayer.com. Coming up at 4, it's Tom Swarbrick, but now it's time for Sheila Fogarty. 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 It's